Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'll call back into open session this meeting of the Arlington ISD Board of Trustees for April 18th at 7:25 p.m. Thank you all for coming out to be with us tonight, and I'd like to call on Mrs. Sullins to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please silence your electronic devices. Yeah, throw my there. And if you would please join me in a moment of silence, and if you would keep in your thoughts and prayers the folks in Boston, my hometown, and all those folks at the Czech stop and in West Texas after last night's tragedy. Amen. We have no program presentation tonight. We'll start with the good stuff. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. I would like to recommend the individual discussed in closed session for the position of Assistant Superintendent for Technology and Telecommunications.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Sullins, second by Dr. Reich. Please vote. All present voting in the affirmative. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, I'd like to introduce our new Assistant Superintendent for Technology, Mr. Chad Branham. Chad attended Texas A&M University College Station and received his Bachelor of Arts.
Who said that?
And Western Michigan University to obtain his Master's of Arts. Chad's most recently the Executive Director of Technology for the Capel ISD and has worked in Capel since 1999 in different technology positions. Chad, congratulations, and anything you'd like to say or anyone you'd like to introduce?
Well, first of all, President Barron, members of the board, as well as Dr. Cavazos, thank you very, very much for the opportunity to be a part of this great team in Arlington ISD. Really excited and looking forward to being a collaborative teammate to those within the district and really trying to make a bigger impact on the learning process. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I did have a few folks with me I'd like to introduce tonight, if that's okay. My wife, Tabitha, wife of 17 years. She keeps me on the right track. My daughter, Karis, first grader. And then I've got two boys, Keegan, sophomore, and Cade, seventh grader. So, again, thank you very much. Very much looking forward to being a part of the Arlington team and can't wait to get going. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And it's our custom that we're going to have a little reception for you out in the lobby. So if you'll go with Ms. Evans, and if the rest of the folks will give us a head start, take your family if you like. And go on up. Go on out there. There you go. And we will be right back in 10 minutes. Thank you. We are back. The first action item is a parent grievance, and that has been withdrawn, and we will consider that at a later meeting. It takes us to our discussion items. And this is a work session tonight, so we will not be having an open forum for agenda items or an open forum for non-agenda items. First discussion item is the Truancy Partnership. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. And this is a partnership that we're establishing with Tarrant County, and it's been an effort that has been discussed over the course of several months. Dr. Reich led some of that discussion with Andy Wynn as well. And so tonight we want to present the draft MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, and it's really based on the work of an attendance committee, or a truancy committee, I should say, that was formed to establish some research or look at the research of the causes for truancy and then some solutions. And so we use that as the foundation, and that report was reviewed with staff. Sylvia Nichols has been very involved. In fact, Sylvia Nichols, our grant coordinator, chaired that committee. Is that right, Sylvia? Of the truancy review or research. So tonight, Michael Hill will present the information about the research and then some information about the Memorandum of Understanding for your consideration. Mr. Hill.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cavazos. President Barron, members of the board, as Dr. Cavazos is kind of giving us a brief overview, I'd like to start again by thanking Commissioner Wynn for working with us through this planning and development stages here. Help me out. Okay, here we go. Last time I was here, we had some, but we're moving on. We're moving on. Again, this is a partnership with Tarrant County Commissioners Court seeking effective solutions to address the truancy issues that we have. Just a little background information about truancy. And again, I won't read this word for word, but it's broken down into three areas that we like to really focus on, and that's the chronic absences, those missing 10% or more of school during one academic year. The severe chronic absences, those students who are missing 20% or more of the days during a 2-month time within the school year. And because schools are paid for ADA, these are rarely identified. When you have an attendance rate of 90–95%, you kind of unintentionally overlook those kids or those chronic absence issues. And so we want to make sure that we're putting a real focus on those areas. And habits form in early years that lead to habitual school absence. And so we want to look at some opportunities to address this starting as early as possible. Again, this gives us a brief definition of what truancy is. It's an offense committed by if the individual is 12 years of age or older or younger than 18. That individual is required to attend school under the education code. If the individual fails to attend, again, that's what we talked about at that first slide, then that's when the truancy kind of shows its head. The concerns in a recent focus group with AISD schools, secondary schools, as well as some Fort Worth ISD schools and Everman ISD, this Center for School Engagement found these three areas were ones that were really highlighted. And it says that many home environments dampen rather than enforce their child's motivation to strive for excellence in school. Police tickets seem to serve to alienate students from school and seem to be the entrance into what is commonly known as the school to prison pipeline. And academic achievement seems to be hindered by policies such as lockouts and things of that nature for those kids who are already struggling. The engagement recommends that we do not withhold learning, or we do not hold learning as a punishment. We require effective classroom management training for all teachers, and we address the root causes of disciplinary infractions through restorative justice, which is where the partnership really kind of blends together. The concerns for the community, we talked about as adults, people who were truant as students, they have poor physical and mental health, work in low-paying jobs in some instances. In some instances, they live in poverty, utilize the welfare system extensively is what the research shows, and have children with behavior problems, and it leads to potentially incarceration. The solutions. Again, this is a big study that the engagement kind of lended itself to these solutions here. Again, we're talking prevention, intervention, and court management to address these solutions, or to address these issues as a whole. And it gives you a little bit about each one of them. Basically, or mainly, the community family service part in the prevention, reconnecting the youth in the intervention, and court to school liaison case managers for those who are, again, in that court management piece. So we're looking to join with Tarrant County Commissioners Court through a memorandum of understanding, and basically all of the previous slides lends itself to what we want to do, and that is to form a working partnership between AISD and Tarrant County to develop shared strategies, resources, and data to quantify the truancy and determine benchmarks for implemented solutions, and lastly, to commit to work together to develop prevention, intervention, and management to address the truancy issues. Questions that myself or Ms. Nichols may be able to answer?
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. Thank you for the introduction on this, Mr. Hill. Can you tell me, as far as going forward, we'll have the memorandum of understanding developed. At that point, do you have a timeline for some of the specific programs that would be implemented regarding prevention and intervention?
Specifically, Dr. Reich, we have not gotten to that level yet, but we have talked about what some of the programs could potentially be, but to actually put it down and give timelines on it, no, sir.
Okay. And I would like to publicly thank Commissioner Wynn for working with this. Andy, if you would please come on down if you'd like to say a few words about this. My reason for that is I think this is an excellent example of partnership and collaboration of what we can do. And I've been very interested in doing this, but if it wasn't for this man standing before us, we would not be here talking about this. So thank you, Andy, and if you have any words, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. You are making me blush. I'm a little shy when I speak in front of the public. So, President Barron, Superintendent Cavazos, board members, it's truly an honor for me to be here with you to talk about an issue that is very near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure truancy is also very important to each and every one of you. During the past, I would say 28 months, I have been pursuing the issue of truancy. My goal was to understand it. I talked to many stakeholders. I talked to many of you. I talked to all parents, and I talked to students even. And I came to the realization that we have a lot of understanding. We have a lot of know-how regarding truancy, but a lot of those knowledge are not collective. They're not being put into one source of common knowledge base. And then I also came to the realization that everybody cares and every entity in Tarrant County cares about truancy, but there is somehow a disconnect. I talked to Dr. Cavazos, and we agree that in order for us to really, truly solve truancy, we have to clearly understand the nature of the problem first. As a result, Tarrant County took some initiative to conduct some high-level study. But essentially, ultimately, Tarrant County will have to work with Arlington ISD to collaborate, to share knowledge, to share data, and to come up with best practices and to work together to solve a very important problem. Truancy, to me, is a gateway to other social problems. And if we deal with truancy now, then in the long run, we will be solving a lot of other heartaches, and many of which we have been witnessing in the past week. And not to mention saving a lot of money from the federal level to the state level and certainly at the local level. So as a result, I'm here asking for your support to allow us an opportunity to explore the various options, using our common knowledge, sharing our common data, so we can build a service model that can truly bring truancy to the lowest level, if at all possible. I think each and every one of us, especially you, know and you believe in the future of our community. And you know that the most important asset to our community future is our children. And you know that in order for our children to produce in the future, nothing is more important than education. And in order for us to really help our children, we have to find innovative ways to keep our children in school. And that is the reason why I'm here, and I'm hoping that together we can really deliver a service model to solve truancy in an effective manner. Judge Matt Hayes, Judge Linda B. Davis, Constable Clint Burgess, and Constable David Woodruff would like to express their appreciation to you as well. And they have informed me and allowed me to tell you that they are 100% behind this effort. And I'm sure the members of the Commissioners Court will also support this, even though we have not officially voted yet, but I'm pretty sure that they will be behind this effort as well. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. Next item is financial futures. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, Cindy Powell will lead us off in the financial futures report to the board. Ms. Powell.
Good evening, President Barron, board members, Dr. Cavazos. The 2013-2014 Financial Futures Committee has completed its work, and they are here this evening to deliver their report to you on their work. And so I'm going to make a couple of brief statements to introduce the topic, and then I will introduce the chairperson to take it from there. When we started the FFC process in February, our very first meeting, among other things, we discussed our budget forecast. And we showed them the current budget, and then we showed them a forecast for the next 3 years. And this is a forecast that we've been working off of since last fall. We've updated it for some things that this board did even in September when we amended the budget for higher property values and also for the strategic plan budget amendment. One thing I will point out is that for our forecast for next year, the 2013-14 year, we are forecasting that if current law were to remain in effect for state funding, and if we were to not give any salary adjustments, we would be looking at a surplus of roughly $9.8 million. And again, I stress this is a forecast. There are lots of individual little projections that flow up to this very succinct little slide you see here before you. We do know, though, that as we have progressed through the legislative session, that there is work being done to add money to public education, and I'm going to show you that on the next slide, that would potentially increase our state funding for next year. And so the forecast would, if you include those projections, would be somewhat higher than a forecasted surplus of $9.8 million. But again, we are developing the budget now. We're putting the final pieces together. And actually, we're working on the big piece now, is where we turn the salary portion of the budget. Personnel has finished their work, so now then we, in staffing, and so we are about to begin the process of taking that final snapshot of approved positions and building the payroll budget, which, as we all know, is roughly 88% of the budget. So We will be working on that and finishing our preliminary budget within the next couple of weeks, and we'll be bringing that back to the board in May for discussion. We will get our first look at property values following April 30th. That's when we get a preliminary estimate from the appraisal district. And then certainly the legislature will be in session all the way until the end of May, to May 27th. And so we still have that to look forward to finalize our budget. But in terms of what has been filed and passed now by both the House and the Senate in terms of appropriations bills, they both put money back into public ed, as we discussed at our last meeting. The Senate version puts about $1.5 billion back into public education, and the House version puts about $2.5 billion back into public ed. And so the models for the impact to us of those additions range anywhere between about $9 million and $16 million that we could potentially recognize in terms of additional state aid for next year. I'm not going to count on any of that money until May 27th, and they've gavelled the session closed, and we know what the bill is. And usually school finance is the very last thing that they do, so we have a little ways to go on this. This evening we have several of our committee members here, and I believe that the chairperson is going to introduce them all, but I want to say before we go any further how much I appreciate the work that this committee does. FFC is always an interesting experience, and each one has its own personality, and I am always impressed with the way in which a group of people come together and in a very short period of time process and begin to understand the things that impact us in our world and the things that impact our budget. A lot of it's very complex, and so some of them come to us brand new and not having done this before, and they work very hard at it, and they make some outstanding recommendations. And the last few years we've seen this evolution into more of a broader thinking than just looking at specific dollars in a budget, and it's very interesting to watch and be a part of. So I'm very pleased then to introduce the FFC chairperson this evening, Dan Malone, and then he will make the remainder of the introductions.
Thank you, Cindy. President Barron, distinguished members of the board, Dr. Cavazos, and members of the AISD administration. For the last 21 years, the FFC has had as its purpose to provide the board with valuable input from the community through insight into the community's expectations. So our goal in our presentation tonight is to demonstrate to you that even in the 22nd year of the existence of the FFC, that we are indeed a beneficial process for the board, and that we continue to provide the board with valuable input, insights, and expectations of and from the community. So toward that end, you put 20 members of the community together. We started meeting about 2.5 months ago, and we read and listened, we learned, we requested information, we gathered data, we discussed, sometimes even debated, and we are coming to you with what we think the community's expectations are relating to the district finances. And before I go on, I'd like to recognize the members of our committee. Not all are able to come. Even one person is sick. We've got a few out of town. But I'd like to read all the names, and they'll stand as their name is called. Bob Ashmore, Chad Bates, Charles Brady, Dana Brewer, Robert Brewer, by the way, our first couple on the FFC as far as we know, Justin Chapa, Jacqueline Eccles, Shannon Hanrahan, Michael Lark, Ann Mason, Keisha Mays, Eric McKeever, Victoria Myers, John Nolan, Shelley Rodriguez, Eric Salas, Ismail Tahir, Laura Thurston, and David Wilbanks. Thank you to each of you for your service. By the way, 9 out of the 20 on our committee have previously served the FFC in some capacity. Now, we as a committee have 2 groups that we would like to thank. I'm getting behind on my slides, excuse me. The first group that we would like to thank is the board's FFC Liaison Committee. comprised of 3 persons who are truly public servants in the best sense of that word. I'm not sure why you're occupying the right wing today. Maybe it's the left wing from the other side, I don't know. But Mr. Tony Pompa, Ms. Jamie Sellens, and Ms. Gloria Pena, thank you not only for your service on the board and all the work you do on the board, but for the many hours you spent with us as a committee, as subcommittees, and your insightful guidance in the voting and discussion process. Thank you all 3. The next group that the committee would like to thank is our administration support team. And every single one of the individuals listed on this slide was present for some or all of our meetings. In fact, the 5 that we've been able to identify, and I hope I don't miss any, that attended all of our meetings were Dr. Cavazos, Ms. Powell, Cindy Powell, Tony Drollinger, Mandy Mew, and Carly Eubank were there for all of the meetings, and we want to thank them. And I would like to particularly express my appreciation to Cindy Powell. There you are. Cindy, those of you who are at the board meetings, you know how prepared she is. Those of you who get to work with her, you know how good she is. I had several of my conversations with Cindy during work hours, but frankly, I found that most of the emails I received, well, actually, I made a note. April 4th, I received an email at 11:36 p.m. April 3rd, the morning before, at 7:09 a.m. And my final email was, actually, wasn't last night. It was the wee hours, I guess, of yesterday morning. It was at 12:31 a.m. Cindy, we thank you for your dedicated service to the students and to the committee. So now, on to the work of the committee. This is the board's charge to us. You know it well because you gave it to us. I would like to emphasize the second point in which we review and discuss the Achieve Today, Excel Tomorrow strategic plan. The first meeting that we had, Dr. Cavazos presented the strategic plan to us. And with his insightful recommendation, we also discussed the metrics or the measures of the strategic plan as we went through all of our recommendations. So some of the presenters tonight may mention the metrics. If they don't, it's because I put a very limited time period on them to get through. But we have had that at the forefront of our thinking as we've gone through the recommendations this year. I did also want to point out that we did not get to the district's natural gas fund. I know another group is looking at that, so we won't be reporting on that tonight. But the first sentence of this first bullet point is probably where we focus the most, and that is identify and prioritize any programs, departments, or expenditures the committee can agree by majority vote that the Board of Trustees should consider adding to or reducing, deleting from the budget. You wouldn't think this would be a major point, but we actually had to invoke the services of the registered parliamentarian who was a member of our committee to tell us what a majority vote meant. Now, I'm going to leave you hanging as to what that mystery vote is. I think it'll become obvious maybe when that presenter comes up. But we had some interesting email discussions about that. So the committee met a total of 7 times. The first 3.5 meetings were devoted to learning about the most relevant issues facing the district, including, as I've mentioned, the strategic plan, Texas school finance, and the metrics of comparison districts. And then we had 2 different meetings with the consultants conducting the curriculum audit and the facilities assessment. The last 3.5 meetings, we devoted to discussing the various recommendations that members had. At that point, we formed 3 subcommittees, which is a new process for FFC, and you'll hear more about that in a minute. Each subcommittee had 6 to 7 members, and then we used the subcommittee process to hash out, I would say, the best consensus recommendations. that we were able to. And in the last two meetings, we discussed and voted on all the subcommittee meetings first, and then if any individuals had additional recommendations that the subcommittee that hadn't been voted out of subcommittee, then the committee as a whole considered all individual recommendations as well. So to summarize what you'll be hearing, we had a total of 45 recommendations. 25 of those received majority support, about 56%. 3 received majority no votes. I'll go over those at the very end of the presentation. 17 were withdrawn prior to voting. I didn't run any statistics on this to know if this is true or not, but I got the sense that the subcommittee process helped us consolidate motions or recommendations from various members into one motion. It helped us reach a consensus or attempt to reach a consensus at the subcommittee level before we went to the committee as a whole. And I think that's the reason, one of the major reasons for the large number of withdrawn motions. I think also as we heard what the strategic plan was doing already, what was already in works that you put in works, some members thought, well, the board's already doing that. We don't need to make that as a recommendation. So as Cindy's, I think, has mentioned, the estimated impact of the recommendations on the budget, as you can see, total a little over $8 million. We fully understand that this is a very rough estimate only. We do the best to provide her with the details, but we certainly understand that that $8 million figure is a very rough estimate. So with that, we are now ready to present the recommendations to you. Instead of in the past where you've had one presenter, and by the way, that's been an excellent presenter the last 2 years, Chad Bates, as you recall. And Chad was supposed to be here tonight. He came down with a stomach bug. So Chad, if you're listening in, we miss you. Justin Chapa has agreed to fill in for Chad tonight. So the 3 committees, subcommittees that we operated with are listed here: Gifted and Talented in Curriculum, co-chaired by Victoria Myers and David Wilbanks; Community Engagement, co-chairs Charles Brady and Ann Mason; and what we call the Efficiency, Effectiveness, and Equity, or E3 committee, co-chaired by Chad Bates and Justin Chapa. So instead of having one presenter, as we've had in the past years, the co-chairs, the subcommittee chairs, will present the recommendations. So we'll have 6 recommendations from Gifted, Talented, and Curriculum, 6 from Community Engagement, and the E3 committee will have 13. So each of these presenters will come up and introduce themselves in the interest of time. I've told them you can ask questions during the presentation or at the end of their presentation. I think it's probably best to take the questions at that time. Then I'll come up and give the no votes and take any other general questions that you have. Any questions at this point? Thank you. I'll turn it over to David Wilbanks and the Gifted, Talented, and Curriculum Subcommittee. Thank you, David.
President Barron, Dr. Cavazos, and trustees, proud to present our recommendations from our subcommittee on curriculum and gifted and talented programs. First off, I want to bring your attention to what was item number 31 in our list of proposals. And it was brought to our attention by Ms. Mays that there were several students who didn't have access to quality prep classes for SAT and PSAT and college readiness classes, as well as the AccuPlacer test. And so we felt we approved a motion to provide prep classes either on the weekends or after school at no charge to students in the district, because under our strategic plan, we want to make sure and take economics out of the equation in terms of allowing those students to achieve and go on to college. So that proposal passed 18 yes, unanimously, 18 yeses, 0 no's, and 0 abstentions. The second item that our subcommittee presented was what I like to call mind the gap. In this case, it's the math gap. It was brought to my attention by several of our principals at the middle school level as well as the elementary school level that for a certain segment of our students, especially those that go on to AVID, who we encourage to take advanced classes, really struggle with math. And there's a gap between a known gap that exists in our curriculum from the sixth grade, regular sixth grade curriculum, and the advanced pre-algebra, seventh grade pre-AP math. And we worked diligently with staff, including Ms. Hallbrook, Debbie Williams, Evan Smith, as well as Daniel Gallagher and some of the principals to really understand the issue and what it took to eliminate that gap. Because as you know, with math, that gap continues to build and prevents those students to being able to handle the accelerated math at the high school level and beyond. So we came up with a recommendation to move kind of the AVID philosophy down to sixth grade. And in addition to the accelerated curriculum that's on Curriculum Central for sixth grade, to really identify those students in the fifth grade and provide extracurricular activities, maybe a 3-week math course during the summer to prep them, and then provide a specialized class, a separate class at the sixth grade level to provide an AVID-like training environment with differentiated learning in small groups with tutorials in class as well as after school to help them catch up and eliminate that gap in the sixth grade. And then also follow on between the sixth and seventh grade in the summer of the sixth and seventh grade to again help prepare them, because essentially to eliminate it, those students have to cover 2 years worth of math in 1 year, which is a big challenge. So proud to announce that one also was unanimous with an 18 voting in the affirmative, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions. The next proposal was number 10 in your packet, and this proposal was to create either or an IB Academy at the K through 12 level or and/or a magnet program. We have a number of parents in the district who look at the programs that are offered in Fort Worth and Dallas and the surrounding areas, and the IB academies like Westlake Academy, and they're opting out of the district for those more rigorous programs. And so our proposal was to look at really creating an accelerated curriculum or a magnet curriculum for those parents who want those kind of challenges for their students within the district, so they're not opting out of the district. That one also passed with 17 in the affirmative and 1 abstention. The next item was funding for after-school programs. We understand from briefing from the staff that there were several programs. I think one was a 21st Century program that provided after-school programs to our students, and we've lost that funding for the coming year. So we feel that those types of programs are critical and are aligned strongly with our strategic plan. We'd hate to see those kind of programs go away. So we also voted 17 in favor of that proposal with 1 abstention. And along those same lines, we know that staff is working to provide world language immersion after-school programs in several languages, I believe 7 different languages. We also wanted to let the board know that we're in favor of such programs and think those are also critical to aligning with the strategic plan, and that proposal also passed with the same margin. And then our final recommendation was we received on the committee a couple of emails from principals who'd requested a GT coordinator. Our committee felt that in addition to GT, we want to make sure that all students have the ability for enrichment and differentiated learning within the classroom. And so we passed our proposal number 7, which was in several parts, and I'll kind of go through them one by one. But we want to make sure that we are using the state funds that we're receiving for students at the elementary level for GT and enrichment activities at the elementary level, along with additional funds, so that the teachers have the curriculums and tools they need to provide enrichment for those students who need enrichment in grades 3 through 6, which is Part 7A. And then also to provide a certified GT teacher coordinator at the elementary level. We know that might be cost prohibitive at 57 campuses across the district, but maybe in a cluster sharing role. And that person could help out on things like helping train the staff on differentiated learning instruction within the classroom and being able to provide the enrichment for those elementary students. But specifically, we want to make sure that the district at every campus, not just some, but every campus, is in compliance with the Texas State Plan for the Education of Gifted and Talented Students at either the recommended column or the exemplary column. As you may know, that guideline stipulates a in compliance column as well as the recommended and the exemplary columns. So I believe we are rated as in compliance, but if you go throughout the district, it's obvious that some campuses aren't even in compliant. So we feel that that resource would help us achieve that and achieve a higher standard towards the Texas State Plan. And then finally, they could also help with the requirement under that plan is to provide co-curricular projects within the classroom, which is where we're probably most out of compliance if you go from campus to campus. And then help coordinate with parent and business volunteers for those extracurricular activities for programs like the very successful Destination Imagination. And I have to have a shout out to my campus, Butler. The 4th grade team is going to the global competition in Tennessee, an outstanding group of kids, and they've worked hard. And I understand there's a team from Ditto also that's going to the global competition in that program. So that's a big deal. Oh, Hill. Sorry, Hill. Thank you. Yes, they will. Sorry, Hill. No, Hill. Send it to Mr. Hogg. He'll make sure I get it. So I believe that was it for all my committee. And so now I will turn it over to... Any questions? Oh, wait. Any questions, first of all?
Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Barron. Real quick, thank you, Mr. Wilbanks and the whole committee. Again, every year, awesome. On the World Language Immersion Program, y'all mentioned the after-school program. I know there's lots of programs that go K through 9, full immersion. Spanish, Spanish, Hindi, Mandarin, Chinese, and Arabic are the most requested languages. Mm-hmm. Now, was there discussion over not just the after-school program? I think that's a quick fix, but a full immersion program?
No, to be honest, we were briefed briefly by staff on what the opportunities were in this, and we thought this aligned well with the strategic plan, so we thought we would definitely, our committee was unanimous that we wanted to support such an idea. So we really didn't get into the specifics on that particular plan outside of what was briefed to us by staff.
Okay. I think that's a good way to take something from the FSC and expand it for when we get it back. Also on the SAT, PSAT prep classes, I know some of our schools do that. Did you guys get the numbers of how much we're doing right now on the prep that made that such an overwhelming recommendation? I mean, are we that far behind? Are we doing it some, not a little? I don't know the numbers on that at all.
Evan or Debbie or who, I'm not sure who is over that, but we did have some discussion, but we felt that there was enough gap. We had
further review from the district to review and look at implementing. So I think it's a great idea. Okay, Thank you.
Mr. Hibbs.
David, you guys did an awesome job with that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I had a similar question on the PSAT and SAT. Well, on that particular prep, we weren't able to estimate the financial impact on that one at this time.
That's correct. I think we didn't have enough specifics about what the structure would be to make an estimate at this time, but staff is beginning to work through some of these things, and they are working to kind of define what that would look like so that we can put dollars
Okay,
with them.
okay, okay. David, I always look at the quotes and things in presentations. And under recommendation number 7, the bottom quotes you have, starting in the 2013-14 calendar year, we don't need to wait 5 years for a curriculum audit to make this change. Was there, I understand that we want to get it started, but where did the waiting for 5 years for an audit?
That came out of a quote, talking with a number of parents with GT kids in my cluster. There's pent-up demand because there's a little bit of frustration maybe that we're underserving those students.
Okay.
And we, to address the issue, I want to thank Ms. Sullen. She came out and spoke to the group of parents and shared with us the strategic plan because we thought that was important for them to hear that we are addressing it. But the comments afterwards were still that, a curriculum audit sounds great, but it sounds like it's going to take 5 years and my kid's going to be out of here. Okay. And so there is strong concern about addressing it now and not waiting. There's obvious things that we feel, that the parents feel that the district can do to address it now.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate that.
And we'll still be in line with the curriculum audit and the things where we know we're going to go. So
I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anybody saying that our curriculum audit's going to take 5 years for it to be
implemented. Being on the inside and seeing where they are with the curriculum audit and what they're doing with the instructional model, you guys aren't waiting 5 years. You guys are moving,
okay.
And I want to commend the board for that. I've been very impressed with this strategic plan. I've been involved with strategic plans in the corporate world, and sometimes they just take forever, cost a lot of money, and they get put up on a shelf never to be seen. You guys aren't even, the ink's not even finished on it, and you guys are moving forward, so.
I appreciate the clarification.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you. David, can you give me a little bit more detail on number 10 on the create a K-12 IB Academy or a magnet school? There's a lot of thoughts in that paragraph, and the first thing that comes to my mind is the number of IB schools that we have. Would this recommendation be in addition to what we already have, or to consolidate those into one that would service a K-12 environment? Just that as a starter, can you give me a little bit more detail?
That's a good question, Dr. Reich. We kind of left this one a little vague because I actually was the one who proposed this, and I had a very specific idea, but then there were a number of great ideas, so we thought it better to leave it a little vague because there's some talk about maybe creating a school within a school academy model, and I'm of the mindset that we've got 57 schools out there. If we've got 2 or 3 great ideas, let's put them out there and see which one sticks to the wall. So that's why we kind of backed off on being a little too prescriptive with this, but we do know, and this also combined a couple of ideas, magnet school with an elementary IB model or a K through 12 IB model so that we could compete with some of the other charter schools that some parents are opting out of the district for.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's great. I think your forward thinking is in complete alignment with what we're thinking up here. So I'm glad to see that come from the community.
And you guys probably already know this, but there are a couple of principals at the elementary level who are really excited about an IB elementary school model and would like to be the first in line to sign up for it. So
great, great. Thank you. You guys did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Next up is Chad. Charles. Sorry.
Something like that. All right. President Barron, Dr. Cavazos, the board. Hello. Our subcommittee was community engagement and communications. Ann Mason and I were both leaders of that subcommittee. And you guys are going to have easy work with ours because nobody voted against any of these 6 recommendations. There were some abstentions, but we've got to know, and I think that the major idea is that we understand, and Dr. Cavazos was in there kind of giving us some background on what was going on with the strategic plan in its implementation and the massive amount of data that everybody's putting together. So every decision that we made is made to enhance that, and we also tried to keep cost as a factor into this. So if you're following the strategic plan, pretty much the 22nd portion back is where you're going to be going at, which is delivery of customer service to our parents and our students, and community engagement of people, getting buy-in from our stakeholders. 40 was where we started, and I really wish that Mr. Salas was here. Eric Salas is an educator. He's also a dynamic guy and a very impassioned public speaker, and he made this suggestion. As everybody knows, you know, we're not the same. Oh, there we go. We gotta get there. Yeah, number 40. Okay. What did you push to get there? The arrow? Okay. The that arrow or the that arrow? The space bar. Okay. But the Ambassadors Club. And I thought that that was a pretty catchy name. We kind of came up with that together. But a lot of our students, they go home to some very harsh economic realities when they go home. The here and the now, and how this affects me immediately, and how I can directly benefit from this over the next 12 to 18 months is a big thing for these guys. And we are turning out really wonderful kids, really wonderful students who are becoming very productive members of our business community. And we wanted to invite people who have gone off maybe to work at GM, or people who have become a member of the Iron Workers Union, or people who maybe are in automotive service, or the cosmetology, from the cosmetology wing, and have them come back to school and relate their experiences and their successes to the students that we have now. That's going to require us keeping track of those guys after they graduate, and it's also going to require class time. This was the most expensive of all of our recommendations, but we feel that it's necessary because if one of us were to go in there, and Eric, he was really funny when he said it, but he called us a bunch of stuffed suits and the kids aren't going to listen to us, and maybe he's right. I don't know. But there's something to that. Kids that have very recently graduated and can come back and relate their experience to the kids, there's very powerful message in that. 39, a State of the District annual campus event. Most of the time, when you're talking about events held at individual campuses, you're talking about, you know, open house so that you can come and meet the teachers and that sort of thing, and you get good community participation in that, but there's very little opportunity to discuss the state of the district. There's very little opportunity to discuss our strategic plan in those instances. So we wanted to open up the schools to discuss those things, not only what the strategic plan is, but why it's important. And the idea behind this suggestion is that it's going to enhance community involvement in schools where we already have great community involvement, and maybe start up something in schools where we don't. And so this is going to be a get to know us kind of a thing. Come on in, get to know our school, get to know what our goals are as a district. People that are, you know, new to the community or sometimes new to the country. You know, it's important to have people so that they can relate to their students and they can relate to what you all are doing and to our goals as a community. 27, this is Ann's suggestion. I hope I don't mess it up too bad, but Ann's big thing was a grassroots movement. The grassroots movement throughout our schools to where instead of there being one point of communication where the superintendent and the principals from each of those schools could develop a network of people, parents within their district or within that cluster to help And instead of there being one point of communication, there would be several. And it would be the job of folks to volunteer, to keep up with the superintendent, and to communicate information in a grassroots way. And I guess the cost is estimated at $53,000. I don't know where that comes from, but yeah. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but.
No, just that it was the idea is to get, as many parents involved as we can in ways where they just, sorry.
Yeah, they can hear you.
Where they just, as many parents involved like me, basically, who I'm not the PTA person. And at the schools where my children are, when you go to the, I love PTA, but I don't go to the meetings, unfortunately, because we got a lot going. And when you do go, there's a few people there. And so this idea is to find people who are, the ones that I run in my group with, which are the ones who are really involved. They've got kids that are involved in every activity we can come up with, which is why we can't ever be at the other stuff. And you're doing lots of stuff. And so I find that most of the people I run in circles with at both elementary and junior high level have no clue about any of the stuff that I heard about during this process, including myself. And I was blown away and loved it and super impressed. And y'all are doing amazing work. And most people don't know about it. And so most people like me that are just parents and aren't already involved in some other way on a daily basis. There's a small group of people that are involved, in certain things, but not the majority of parents. So that was the idea. And Mr. Pompa, you asked me, where would we find these people? And it finally dawned on me. We find them at number 39. When you get through at the end and Dr. Cavazos comes in here and he totally inspires everybody about what's going on and what's happening, and you tell them what you need from them, one of the things you need is some people to be on this committee. So that's where you're going to find them. You're welcome.
Okay. Well, and that was the idea behind it. I thought that it was great, and once again, very cost effective. I think that we can do this and get the word out without spending lots of money. Okay, we're going to press that. Enhancing outreach to non-English speaking parents. This is, I believe that there's a portion of the strategic plan that deals very directly with I believe it's number 26 here. Yes, parent participation and offerings in Parent University. I think Mr. Hill was speaking a little bit earlier today about how the environment in a home fosters the environment in school. And this is meant to enhance that. Obviously, this is a very large part of the strategic plan. We just wanted to make sure that that portion of the strategic plan has a lot in mind for non-English speaking parents. We want for folks in our schools to be successful in our country. We want for them to be successful in our community. And a lot of that has to do with the type of skills that they have so that they can pass them on to their children. And that was kind of where we were headed with that. But it's classes for non-English speaking parents. Inform Education Foundation of the special FFC request, and I will read this directly. Motion to pass this information along to Arlington Education Foundation in order to compete for needed dollars with private schools, colleges, and universities. The district should apply for fund development strategies used effectively by these other institutions. Basically, make sure that they're doing everything that they can to write as many grants as they can, to get as much money as they can to help on the funding side of things. And if there's anything we can do to help, to let us know. And last, strengthen our collaboration with faith-based and nonprofit organizations. Mrs. Miller spoke extensively about, and she's wonderful, by the way. A lot of the folks that we have doing this work for us that are organizing these types of services for our disadvantaged students are really just top-notch. And I got to learn a lot through that process. We all did. But one of the things that we feel where there's a common denominator amongst, disadvantaged families and lower income families and families that maybe aren't in that boat is everybody's going to church, it seems like. We've got a lot of church. We've got good church participation here in town. And, we're unaware of any real collaboration, organized, structured collaboration amongst our faith-based organizations and nonprofit organizations in the school. So part of the strategic plan, particularly 26, also should probably focus towards that and see if we can't maintain a healthy dialogue where we're all helping each other out and where we can communicate our message to them and let them know that school is a wonderful place for them to come and be involved. But I'll open it up to questions at this time. You can see there that $358,298. But I was real proud of the work that the committee did. Wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Mr. Hibbs.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brady, good job. Thank you very much. Thank you for the subcommittee here. A couple of points that you brought out. One, I'll mention the strengthening the collaboration. With faith-based and nonprofit organizations. I think that's key. Mr. Nix at Carter Junior High did a great job in being able to work with the two churches right there with next to the school there, and I know that they had a large population of children being reached after school that chose to go there, and I absolutely agree with you that that's something that we have in our strategic plan. We need to seek out to give these children the opportunity that would like to follow any of these nonprofits or faith-based education or collaborations, that it should be able to take place. Another one, though, is on 32 that you mentioned about enhancing our outreach to non-English speaking parents. I know that Ms. Sullins, Mr. Pompa, and myself have, along with the superintendent, had met with a number of moms from the Hispanic community. And this is one that I think that we really need to get after and enhance dramatically. I mean, this is one that we shouldn't be waiting on. I've heard more of these parents saying that they want to have PTAs on their campuses. They just don't have the interpreters that maybe can work with our teachers on those campuses and such. So I'm glad that you guys brought that recommendation forward. I think that's rock solid, and I appreciate that the vote was had 16 individuals on that committee in favor. So nice presentation, and I think some rock solid recommendations.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Rice.
Thank you. Mr. Brady, I absolutely echo what my colleague just stated. It's very reassuring to see many of these things completely in line and on target with what we've put together in a strategic plan. My question is, with so many things not able to estimate financial impact, I just want to clarify it that the thought of all of these things, whether the cost to undertake them is small or great, the risk does not outweigh the benefit as far as overall financial success for the district, for the community. And I only say that because there might be some people looking at this going, well, your financial futures, you're supposed to come up with ways to generate revenue, save money, do something to help our budget. But I don't think we've articulated clearly that all of these recommendations, and tell me if I'm wrong, all of these recommendations are ones that, if implemented, will greatly help our bottom line in our district. Is that correct?
I think that you're absolutely correct there.
Okay.
I mean, and it's not just, I don't know, there's an interrelation with all of this. You know, Andy said it best when he was up here, is that when we have kids that show up to school, they're not utilizing the criminal justice system, and overall, the impact is felt throughout. This is, we have a whole bunch of buildings, we have a whole bunch of wonderful professionals that are doing their job, and they're there to work, and they're there to be utilized. And when we engage our parents, and the parents are indeed engaging their kids, then we're utilizing the resources to a fuller degree than we would be otherwise. And that's a big bottom line thing. It's much better to have employees that are running these programs and making the most out of their talents than kind of waiting for something to come along, you know. And that was the idea behind this. And some of them we weren't able to estimate financial impact. I mean, obviously we're going to have to keep doors open at night, and that requires security, that requires lights, that requires expense that we can't possibly calculate at this point. But it's necessary. It's necessary, and that was, I mean, cost was a factor. We tried to keep things as low as we could, but, you know, this is the kind of thing where what you just said was very much in line with what the subcommittee was thinking.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Pompa?
Just to pick up a little bit on what Dr. Rice brought up, I think that different committees in different years have really focused on what was really the needs of the district at that time. And so a couple of years ago, when we were in a cash saving situation, obviously we lost over $20 million in funding, then this committee was very much focused on specifically looking for ways to cut costs. And we received some great recommendations from that committee. Last year there was a little bit of that because we were still kind of coming off of that, and then some recommendations really just kind of to improve our services. And this year, because of our financial situation that Ms. Powell presented at the beginning of the year, or the committee meetings, the focus wasn't so much on saving money, but rather on how to effectively use our resources better to improve the educational experience for our kids. So I think that was kind of a little bit of a difference than we've had in the last 2 or 3 years. It had a completely different feel to the committee, and frankly, I enjoyed it much more than trying to figure out what to cut. Was figure out how to utilize our resources better. And so I think that's part of the reason for a lot of different recommendations that are not necessarily looking to save money, but just what do we do to improve the district. And I'd much rather be having that conversation than the conversation that we had the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, and that's very much the case. It was, our mission was very different, is that we knew that we had to lose weight, and we knew that we had to spend less, and we wanted to have some say in where we spent less. And definitely, I don't think we had one unanimous vote, 3 years ago. That was a real tough time for all of us. None of us wanted to be in that position. And with this, it's not like we said, okay, well, it looks like we could have a surplus, let's spend it all. I don't think that was the idea at all. It's just, these are some ideas that we have, and we want to be part of the strategic plan process. And if you're asking us our opinion, this is where we're going with it. Okay, I think that's going to do it. Thank you very much for your attention. Oh, I'm sorry.
Almost.
No, I'm here for you. What's up?
I just wanted to commend the committee, of course, for your work, but on this faith-based initiative. I've looked at that in some other districts, and I found that to be something very encouraging for our district. And so I'm so pleased that you brought that forth. In one district in particular I looked at, over 39,000 hours of instruction was delivered in a very short period of time, 36 months, and made a tremendous difference in that particular district and another state. So I really appreciate you bringing that particular and the rest of the recommendations as well, but I think that impact could be exponential.
Yeah,
so.
And we were talking about, it wasn't, of course there's a lot of Judeo-Christian influence, but we've got a wonderful mosque structure and a wonderful Islamic society here. There are very large Hindu prayer temples and prayer centers in town, and I think that the overall concept with what we're trying to do is self-betterment. is the concept that we can all work together and make our society a little bit better, and we don't have to breach the subject of religion to do that. You know, we can work together and not discuss religion, you know. Okay.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad that Charles went first to soften the ground a little bit for the expenditures that my subcommittee is about to propose to you. I had the privilege of co-chairing the E3 or 3E, or if you ask a math teacher, E cubed subcommittee for efficiency, effectiveness, and equity. And what I'd like to do is present 6 proposals first, then take questions on those, and then do the remainder. Chad Bates is ill tonight, and he was going to present the last half of the presentation, but I'll be filling in for him. And one of those proposals is something that's near and dear to Chad's heart, so I will try to do it with as much gusto as Chad would have done himself if he were here. One of the first issues that we considered in subcommittee was to look at a situation that occurred 2 years ago with the budget cuts imposed by the state. The district decided to cut 2 kindergarten teaching assistants from each campus. There was a proposal to return those 2 teaching assistants to each campus to go back to the pre-budget cut status quo. But as we explored that proposal, it looks like that more study is needed to determine whether or not a one-size-fits-all approach is best for returning those teaching assistants. The district appears to divvy up teaching assistants on each campus by the number of kindergarten classes offered, and with each a certain number of TAs assigned per the number of kindergarten classes. So the more kindergarten classes that you have, the more teaching assistants are on campus. So as a matter of equity, it would seem like going back to the status quo 2 years ago would be something fair to do. Obviously, it was working 2 years ago, seemed to work then. Why not just go back if the money's there to what was happening 2 years ago? What it sounds like is that some campuses that they have found a way to make it work without those 2 additional teaching assistants. And we heard from other campuses that maybe it wasn't working for them. So what the committee is proposing is that the district study whether or not just a flat 2 teaching assistants per campus is the way to go, or if there's a better way to divvy them up. Maybe looking at the number of kindergarten classes offered, what works best for student safety. We had heard some reports about they were pulling teaching assistants from other areas in during certain times of the day for kindergarten students when the kindergarten teachers were conferencing, and they had been able to make that work, but maybe it wasn't the most ideal thing. And so all we are proposing is that the district study reinstating those teaching assistants in a manner that seems to be the most effective and fair in the board's discretion. The next proposal we looked at was to restore the intervention period at the junior high campuses. We received several proposals sort of along this lines. They were phrased as an intervention period, a conference period, returning junior high campuses to a teaming concept, which is something that was also eliminated during the budget cuts. And what we ended up with was a consensus recommendation to restore an intervention period. And this would be a lot of discretion, it sounds like, at the junior high campuses to use this for professional learning communities, using it as an intervention period per se to go work with students more closely. But whatever works best for those campuses. What we heard was that the junior high campuses consider this to be an issue of equity vis-a-vis the high schools, because the high schools, from what we have heard, had a period restored to them recently, and the junior highs would like to have the same opportunity to work with their students that they feel that their high school compatriots are getting. And so the committee looked at that proposal. It sounds like from the educators we heard from, this is something that the junior highs would like to have back, would be something that would benefit both teachers as professionals and their ability to work with students more intensively. And so the committee overwhelmingly supported a proposal to look at returning some form of an extra conference intervention period into the school days at the junior high. Our next proposal is something that got a lot of interest. What it boiled down to was a consensus recommendation that we would encourage the board to consider giving all district employees a significant pay raise. We're not attaching a number to significant, whether an absolute dollar number or a percentage. Just consider a significant pay raise as the district feels is appropriate in light of how it compares to other districts in the area that it typically benchmarks itself against. There is an extra proposal in here to specifically look at whether the district's administrator pay scales stack up, or the way that administrators are compensated at the campus level stacks up to the districts that the district normally benchmarks itself against. Sort of related to the significant pay increase and a bit more concrete, and also related to the previous budget cuts, was a proposal for the district to reinstate the amount of funding that the district gives to employees to contribute towards their health insurance. The district formerly was at $260 a month. That has dropped to $225 a month given the budget cuts. The proposal is to reinstate that amount back to the status quo. From the data that we looked at, the district is actually near the bottom of its comparator districts in the amount of money that it offers its employees as contribution toward their health insurance. I believe it's $225 a month. And unless I'm remembering wrong, I don't think the district could go any lower. And that's in contrast with the district's compensation approach in terms of salary, where it's typically right at the average among its comparator districts, or slightly above average, and is actually very competitive. In this respect, it doesn't appear that the district's compensation scheme is competitive when it comes to health insurance, and so the committee overwhelmingly voted to recommend that the district consider reinstating that amount back to $260 a month, which, again, the data showed, that we saw showed, even at $260 a month, there would be some question as to whether or not that would be competitive vis-a-vis other school districts. But the proposal was specifically to go back to $260 and not higher, and that's what we would recommend. The next proposal, this is a long proposal. We had a long discussion about this, and I'm going to try to summarize that, and if I do a bad job of it, I'd like to ask Ann Mason to come discuss it, because this was her proposal. But in general, what the proposal asked the district to do is to look at how it staffs certain extracurricular activities that are now staffed in sort of a one-size-fits-all approach, where, let's say that there's a junior high campus, there'll be 4 male coaches for extracurricular athletics, there'll be 4 female coaches for extracurricular athletics, but there might be a great disparity in the number of students who are enrolled in those extracurriculars. So there might be 120 boys enrolled in fall athletics that have to split the 4 coaches. There may be 40 girls involved in women's fall athletics, but they get 4 coaches. And so on a student-to-coach basis, there's actually a gross disparity there. And this contrasts to how the district approaches staffing in a lot of other areas, where it is a student-to-teacher ratio that looks more granularly at how each campus is made up. And so this proposal would ask the district to see whether or not having a more granular staffing approach, considering coaches to students or extracurricular sponsors to students for the larger extracurriculars, would be a better way of staffing than a one-size-fits-all of assigning a set number of extracurricular sponsors or coaches to each campus. Did you okay on that, Ann?
You did great.
Oh, thanks.
It applies to everything, not just athletics.
Yes, the athletics was just an example.
My personal experience, but I know it would apply to everyone, all the extracurriculars.
Our next proposal was to increase substitute teacher pay. Again, this is a sort of in the vein of the significant pay increase, not looking for a specific percentage, not looking for a specific dollar amount, but to consider how substitute pay stacks up against other districts. And I understand that substitute teacher pay is on a per-day basis. There's some consideration of the credentials that each substitute has, the length of time that they have been in the particular position. And so there's a lot of factors that go into that, but the consensus of the committee was that the district should explore whether its substitute pay approach is competitive with other districts. And that was actually the closest vote that we had for this specific subcommittee's recommendations. And with that, I will take questions on what I've presented so far.
Mr. Hibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chapa. Let's start with the last one that you just mentioned.
Okay.
I'm surprised at that vote, to be honest with you. It's interesting to me, and I want, maybe you can give me some of the thought that was behind it in committee when you were having it. You said that your last comment was that the committee thought that the district should give some time or look at this to determine whether or not the salary should be adjusted. Why do you think it was 7-6 with the 4 abstentions?
I think it's because a lot of people brought different perspectives to the table as to this specific issue. I think some of the 7 who voted in favor of the proposal see this as an issue of equity for substitute teachers generally, and that they're generally underpaid as it is, and so any benefit that the district could give them to recognize their status as professional educators or substitute professional educators would be helpful. I think that's one part of the people who voted yes. Another part would say there are some districts who seem to pay better than the district for its substitutes, and again, there's a whole lot that goes into that, but they were just concerned that maybe the district was losing a little bit of competitive edge in substitute teacher pay.
Was there a regional chart that was brought into you to show the differences in pay from district to district?
We weren't provided with a chart, but a representative from UEA sort of self-reported a survey that they had done among different districts that were generally some of the districts that are typically used, this district uses to benchmark itself. And so that was the data that we received.
Okay.
And that actually segues into, I believe some of the 6 who voted no because they didn't feel that they had enough data to make an informed decision on this vote, because the pay appears to differ based on the substitutes' time and service in that particular position, their credential background, and a variety of other factors that differentiate pay even among substitutes, and so that they didn't feel like they could make a specific recommendation without more data.
Okay. As it had to do with the significant pay raise, I kind of cheated and jumped a few pages over and saw that you guys actually took a vote on a 4.5%.
We did.
And was this what was considered a compromise to come back and say without a number in it, it's the recommendation of the committee that the board looks to provide some type of a pay raise this next year?
The quick summary of what happened with that is there were several different proposals in the subcommittee that did assign a specific amount, and they were, given all the different permutations, they were for a 1.5% across the board raise, a 2% across the board raise, a 3% across the board raise, a 3% raise for certain employees, and a 1% raise for other employees. And then finally, at the full FFC, there was a last-minute amendment to specifically consider a 4.5% across the board raise. All of those various things failed.
Okay.
And so the consensus was a significant pay raise.
Okay. And second to that was that we should review the administrative salaries also, correct?
That's correct. And that sort of segued from something that was presented. There was a specific proposal last year that I don't believe made it out of FFC. It might have even been withdrawn. But there's some sense that campus administrators' compensation may not be competitive vis-a-vis other districts. And so for the district to give specific consideration to that subgroup of employees.
Okay. Did you also look at the central administration?
We did not specifically look at central administration.
Because we need to review that also. That's why I was just asking. Okay, I appreciate those. Thank you.
When I first substituted in this district in 1991, the substitutes made, I think it was $33 a day. And my brother, who was a teacher in Boston, said at that time the substitutes were making about $100 a day. I think our substitutes now make $75 a day. We'll certainly look at this, and from the staff, I'd like to see, do we have a shortage of substitutes across the district or in certain areas or on certain days of the week? Friday?
Good evening, Mr. Barron. We typically, Mondays, Fridays can be challenging days, but our sub pool is very rich. We do have ample subs for the jobs that we have.
Rich with bodies or rich with quality?
Rich with bodies, yes. We are working on quality team.
Boy, my train of thought just crashed. So we can look at this?
Yes, we certainly can.
Okay.
We are currently studying
And
this.
since we're looking at creative pay, we should also look at creative sub-pay, where we might want to pay people more to sub on Monday or Friday, if that's what it's going to take to get quality subs in all of our schools all the time.
Yes, we are currently looking at that and looking at some models across the Metroplex.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And the lights are ringing. Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Barron. On the substitute pay, I think we also need to look at our policy of teachers taking the days off, because I know some districts do have extra incentive for teachers not to take the Fridays off, days before school. You can create some creative policy around that to give them incentives so that we don't have those weakness on Fridays. And I would tell also, and I would ask the staff, in our HR compensation review, will they also include substitute pay in that market study?
We can add that.
And I think the critical part of sub-pay, beyond the dollar, is the fill rate. The fill rate's the number one thing you have to look at in sub-pay, because you can pay all you want and you still may not be filling it. And I think the next discussion comes on, I need to go fill rate by individual schools. Because I have some schools it's easy to get subs at, and I could pay nothing, and I get quality subs. I have some schools that I could pay a whole lot of money to, and I would not be able to get a high-quality sub. And it's it's tougher to get. So I think we need to look at, this is one where you almost have to take it to that, that MPE model that we're talking about a little later, and give that evaluation of what's the fill rate going to be for that school, what's the fill rate for those days, what's the fill rate as it's growing, and then from the market study. Because I know some colleagues north of us that pay a whole lot of money more than us, and I don't think their fill rate's much higher than what ours is for the substitute pay. The extra piece on that, Mr. Chop, I would say the kindergarten teacher assistant, the restore intervention for junior high, I think those are good ideas. I think it's something that we need to look at. And I'd ask Dr. Cavazos, in our curriculum audit, are they going to come back with a evaluation with pieces relating back to those?
I think that they're going to look more at the curriculum that's being delivered and how it's being delivered. They may examine some of the planning time and the needs for planning in relation to quality instruction.
Especially at the junior high level.
Absolutely.
I could see them coming back saying, hey, here's a recommendation with your curriculum. They also need more planning
That's
time.
correct.
And that just confirms that answer and decision of what we need to make. So that's all I was asking. I want to make sure we don't have you guys evaluating something that's about to be evaluated and sent back to us in another report that we're getting back. Thank you.
And I think a lot of the discussion that has been said by the board just now is the reason why this vote was so close, because of the different, it's a very complex issue.
Okay, Mr. Papa. All of that.
Thank you, President Barron. Thank you, Mr. Chapa. I think this question is really more for staff on the recommendation on staffing for extracurricular and co-curricular activities. I think can you clarify in terms of making sure, especially in sports, that we have equity between male and female sports, and so that may be some of the reason why sometimes we're overstaffed for maybe a female team than say a football team that has 120 students or athletes? Is there something to that?
We do staff equally between boys and girls sports, and I believe at the junior highs we have 4 boys coaches, 4 girls coaches, and that's regardless of their enrollment. And at the high schools, Mrs. Clark? Okay.
Well,
But we do
Cindy.
staff those
Cindy.
those.
Mr. Hill
Okay.
has the
Mr.
answer.
Hill, okay.
The answer or was a question? No. The junior highs are staffed with 4, and the issue is the coaches come from the existing staff. And so when you have the campus that's staffed through personnel, then those coaches are factored into that. And so to actually increase the number of coaches, you would have an impact on what's in the classroom, or you would just go out and just hire outside people to just coach. And so that's where the issue is right there. At the high school level, there are several coaches, but there are several programs at the high school level also.
So the example that was brought up was, you know, having 4 coaches or 2 coaches for a large men's football team or something like that, and then 4 coaches for a small girls softball team. But again, I guess because of the requirements that we keep equity, then we have to kind of have the same number of coaches for boys and girls. Is there something like that?
That's been the practice.
Okay.
Because again, the coaching staff comes from the existing teaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so we either assign more coaches and then remove them from the classroom to coach during those periods. And then that would in turn increase the class size, and we try to keep the class size based on the staffing ratio. And so now you've got those coaches who are no longer in the classroom teaching math or science, they're out coaching, and the class size just increases there.
Okay, thank you.
And that's some
all I have.
practice.
You want to say that? Okay. Mrs. Hollins?
Thank you. I had a request from the committee that I know that this particular recommendation on the extra and co-curricular staff, that Ms. Ann Mason put together a one-page summary. I think it'd be very helpful if the full board read this one-page summary that was put together. It was very, very good, and I think it'd be very helpful as we move forward. So we could request to get that information. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we can get that for you. That specifically goes into a lot more detail on the concerns behind it, that from a safety perspective, from an equity perspective. And our understanding too is that there are other districts that, obviously there are some equity considerations in terms of gender that a Title IX imposed, but that they don't do it in a set number of extracurricular per campus basis. And so she goes into more detail on that. I think we can get that for you.
I thought it was very helpful and very well done, and thank you, Ms. Mason. It was a great one-page summary. And also, Mr. Hogg, I had the exact same thought as you did on the fill rate on the substitutes, what they look like by campus, by elementary, junior high, high school, and that's my concern on the substitute teaching portion as well. And then also on salary, we talked about, I didn't hear anyone mention what the differentiation should be on maybe a long-term sub. And so I'd like to add that to the list, please. Thank you.
Mrs. Pena?
Well, mine was more along the lines as well on the substitute pay, because I've had substitute teachers tell me once they've taught at a school, they would only accept combat pay to go back. We don't like hearing that, but it's a reality. And so we do need to address it, maybe not across the board, but with some kind of a scheme that allows the teachers to get different substitute pay depending on the school they're going to as well.
And that might roll into MPE, where there would be a base salary for subs, and then the principals could augment it with their MPE funds.
Yeah.
But that's all to be planned. You had
I was just going to bring in one more thing about the athletic programs at junior high school. a lot of the reason that you have the 4 is that you have the coaches dividing because half a team or half of the teams may travel on any given date for sports, and then the other half will be at the school. So to be able to keep parity for 4 volleyball teams or 4 football teams, you actually need to have that number of coaches. It's not that, yeah, a basketball team only has 10, or a volleyball team may only have 15 girls that they carry, and a football team may be traveling with 45 to 50. It's the matter that they need those coaches there for the specific games to be able to coach. So it's not that we're trying to put a smaller number with some and not with the other.
Dr. Reich?
Thank you, President Barron. On this note of substitutes and fill rate and quality, there are some companies out there that we may look at, and Dr. Cavazos and I saw some at the last TASB convention where they perform analytics on the substitutes so that we get good quality subs, and it's a complete analytic software program, and I know they're not the only one. There's probably several out there, and that would definitely help this cause as well as we create this more into a robust program. So I just wanted to put that out there, that with our new technology appointment tonight, his plate's overloaded already and he doesn't even know it yet. Regarding the reinstate the health insurance contribution back to the $260 per month, you indicated that our current contribution in comparison to our like districts is near the bottom of the barrel. If we put it to $260, do you know where that puts us at that point?
It's closer to the middle, but still in the bottom.
Okay. And I know Ms. Powell is going to be bringing us all that type of information during our budget review process. I was just curious if you knew up front what it is, because in insurance, boy, it just goes up and up and up and up. And I know it's costing our employees a whole lot of money, and you think something's got to give somewhere. It's just crazy. But okay, well, I appreciate that information. Thanks.
I think we're ready for round 2.
Okay. So the first part of our next set of recommendations deals with early childhood. One of the largest recommendations on that front is that the district should set a goal of expanding its pre-K program by 50%. This was originally accompanied by a specified time, but that was taken out. And it was, as the discussion proceeded, the number 50% was thrown out sort of just as this sounds like a good number. It seemed like a really unreasonable number, and then as the committee churned through, well, what does the current pre-K program look like? It actually is a very achievable number. From the data that we were presented with, the district currently serves about a little over 4,000 students in its pre-K program. Approximately a quarter of those are in pre-K 3, which is the optional component of the program. Those early childhood services are delivered both on district campuses and through private placement providers that the district contracts with. And from what we understand, through a combination of either expanding the private placement providers, expanding district facilities, which might implicate a future bond package, it would be possible to expand the program in a way, specifically at the pre-K 3 level, to bring it closer to the size that the pre-K 4 program is, and this would actually this would increase the district's early education offerings by more than 50% if that were achieved. There's a lot of research coming out in the last few years. There was a New York Times article last week. There were lots of articles earlier on this year touting a recent study, several recent studies showing that for children from affluent families, they on average will hear 30 million words a year. Students from less privileged families will hear on average 10 million words a year. This creates a gap very early on in their lives that not only persists as they get to school age, but actually widens. And so much of the discussion about K through 12 education centers on actually grades through 9 through 12, which is actually the point where the gap is the widest. So it's sort of like I've heard it compared to sort of the approaching asteroid. When the asteroid gets really close to Earth, you're going to have to push it really good to get it, you know, to miss the Earth. But if we find out in advance that it's coming, you know, you just nudge it a little bit. And so the idea is to nudge early on, and the effects will last a great deal of time. And so when those students enter kindergarten, they'll be on parity with their more affluent peers, and that those not only academic effects, but behavioral effects, socialization effects will persist throughout their education. And those studies specifically show that the student profile, which is now the average student profile for this district, would be the students who are most benefited by an expansion of early childhood programs. This is not a proposal from the committee that the district should commit to a universal pre-K system, which is something that's being bandied about at the federal level right now, but a targeted, which is how it already is. It's a targeted program for those who would most benefit from early childhood services. And so for this district, this committee feels like that is a way for the district to get the most bang for its educational buck. The next proposal tied to that is for the district to commit to securing a National Association for the Education of Young Children accreditation. That's NACE for short. There's a big push as part of the strategic plan to create world-class facilities, to become a premier provider of different types of education. And in the early childhood industry, NACE accreditation is sort of recognized as the gold standard. It would require the district to especially push its private placement providers to commit to increasing their background in early childhood education in the way that they deliver some of their services. But because the district can leverage its sort of market power to that end, we feel that this is something that's achievable. It's something that would definitely set the district apart vis-a-vis other districts. And so we would like the district to explore getting NACE accreditation for its early childhood placements. Chad was going to speak on this issue. What a lot of people don't know about Chad, I've worked with Chad on these committees now for 3 years, didn't know about it until I made this proposal, which I actually have to thank my wife for, is that Chad actually for a long time ran the only NACE accredited child care facility in Arlington. He and his wife ran that and then sold it, and because the accreditation didn't transfer with the sale, that service provider didn't get it. And I know when my family moved back to Arlington from California, we were looking for NACE centers and we couldn't find any in Arlington. And so again, this is a way that could set it apart. And I do wish that Chad were here to explain in more detail what that entails and exactly how he felt it benefited his student population. But I will just leave it at that for now. Our next proposal was from Ismail Tahir. For the district to audit its mineral contracts. There's been a lot in the news lately about the city of Arlington having conducted a similar audit and discovering that they believe that they were underpaid on their mineral contracts by a little over, I believe, $500,000. There's also been news about a prominent Fort Worth family and their business interests also feeling like they did not get the money that should have been delivered to them. And so the thinking is that if the district were to conduct a similar audit, there might be some cost savings realized as a result of that. Next proposal was from David Wilbanks. This is a proposal to add stop arm photo enforcement cameras to the stop signs attached to the district's school buses. When those school buses are stopped and the stop arm is out, state law is that people should stop. What bus drivers tell us is that they often don't. This is an issue for student safety, and the proposal would encourage the district to look into whether it involves contracting with a private provider or some other means, but to get a camera that would take pictures of the violators, have their license plates run, and a civil fine issued, which the district probably doesn't have the authority to do, but the Arlington Police Department does, and that to partner with the police department in some way where the city could potentially the city could benefit from getting those funds and in return provide the district with extra security in the form of Arlington police officers at different events and on campuses. And I believe David would be happy to answer your questions about that if you have any more specifics or would like more specifics. The next proposal is for the district to commit to providing a superior virtual classroom learning environment. This is what I would call the Chad Bates proposal. It was I would say a hobby horse of his last year. It is something he brought up again this year. From what we have heard, the district is, as part of the strategic plan, exploring these options. They've already gone a great deal of the way towards providing these options. but we would like to, and so we'd like to, on the one hand, commend the district for what it's done so far, but to encourage the district to continue looking for ways to provide an alternative to students learning in a brick and mortar classroom. And the emphasis here is on Premier. There is a lot of stuff in the news, different studies that have shown that some of the virtual learning environments that have been offered elsewhere in the country are quite frankly not up to snuff and are not, don't provide programming that we would want to expose our students to. And so for the district to just hold the line on rigor when it comes to these virtual learning communities, but to explore them not only as a means of being more effective in classroom offerings, but providing greater choice to students because it'll allow the district to provide classes that potentially it can't offer now because the student demand is just too low to justify having a teacher in a classroom. Our next proposal, which is sort of related to the virtual learning proposal, is for the district to explore different ways of reducing its cost of providing professional development, whether that's through webinars or more in-house trainings instead of contracting with outside providers, but to explore sort of conducting an audit of how professional development spending is done and seeing if there's any cost savings that can be realized from that. And then finally, another proposal that is in close competition with the earlier virtual learning proposal for being called the Chad Bates proposal. Last year, the FFC spent a great deal of time discussing low enrollment classes, especially at the high school level throughout the district. The data that we were provided with this year showed that there was great progress on reducing the number of unenrolled classes, and so the committee would just acknowledge the district's accomplishments towards that end and encourage them to continue looking at, where possible, reducing the number of low enrollment classes in the future. And with that, I will take questions on the last half of the proposals.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. Well, thank you, Justin, for pinch hitting this portion of the presentation. Did a stellar job. The expansion of pre-K, I think, is something we're all very interested in up here. And as you probably know, we made a commitment, even after the state funding was cut, to continue those public-private partnerships that you mentioned. Hopefully, we'll recoup some of those losses in the legislative session this year that will help us to expand that program. It is absolutely imperative that we do more at that pre-K level. The immediate achievement gap that you spoke of is just resoundingly accurate, and we have to address it. So I really appreciate the committee bringing that up. I'm also interested in this NACE accreditation. I haven't heard of that before, so I'd really like to see the information on that. So look forward to having a visit from Chad with details about that. On the audit of the mineral contracts, is that something that you have a recommendation of utilizing our existing minerals management consultants to do, or to go outside with a separate audit firm, or did you discuss that at all?
It came up briefly in the context of we were informed that the City of Arlington actually had full-time staff that was able to do that, and so that we didn't know that. I don't think the committee has a position either way on how that is done.
Okay, okay. And that might be something, I know that we started looking at with our city council school board collaborative project to maybe work with our city and their staff, or possibly. That would be something I'd be interested in hearing more, if that can go forward or not. Let's see. And the stop arm photo enforcement, the red light camera for the bus, where are we, and this might be a question for Ms. Powell or somebody else, with regard to what bond council has said, utilizing our our school buses that were bought with bond dollars to be able to attach a potential revenue arm on there?
I think that what we've discussed with them is that this could likely work. They would need to see details of whatever final structure we might put forth or want to consider, as long as it's a de minimis amount of revenue to the whole. And this particular recommendation was more along the lines of seeking a partnership with the city so that they would donate services to us.
Right.
And we actually have had a visit with a city official on this, and so those conversations can take place. I know one thing that they have mentioned that they have to be cautious of themselves is not hiring staff at the city on a projected revenue stream. They need to see an established, stable revenue stream too, so that they don't create some unintended consequence on the city's budget. And so certainly we will move forward with those conversations.
And it's my understanding, as far as the business structure of that arrangement, is there's essentially there's no cost of the equipment, or we lease the equipment?
No, we would not, there would not be any cost of the equipment to us.
Okay, and then the revenue is a tapered model where it's basically a 50-50 share of whatever that net of the city school district's part would be. It would be a 50-50 revenue share between
and I don't
us
know
and the city.
the split on that. We
Okay.
haven't gotten to that point yet, but there would
Okay.
be a sharing of revenue between the city, the vendor, and the school district. And the school district's piece would be in terms of donated services.
Right. Well, in the interest of safety, it seems to be very prudent to go forth with this. One question that came into my mind is our district crosses city boundaries, and surely we can work out a deal with Arlington. We have a great relationship. What about Grand Prairie? Have you looked at that yet?
We haven't had any conversation with them, but we have had, we have recognized that we would need to have those discussions as well.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because I don't know if we can't go anywhere with Grand Prairie. I would assume that buses that go to Grand Prairie also go to Arlington, so they would be armed with that camera. Would it just be ignored or disabled when they're in Grand Prairie if we can't work with them? You know, those types of issues. I'd like to see it because, you know, from my standpoint, we want safety for all kids, but we don't want the logistics of it's Arlington versus Grand Prairie to get in our way. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a few left, and those are reporting on our majority no votes. And we've hit the first one already, and across the board 4.5% raise, and you can see that that failed resoundingly. One of the problems we had on our committee this year is a chair who was parliamentary rules challenged, and as I look back at this, I'm not sure that a motion with a second would have gotten this one to you at all, but maybe it's for the best because you see that it was resoundingly defeated. If I had properly called for a second, I don't think you would have been seeing this result because it wouldn't have been on the table. Recommendation 5 is to consider a stipend for the paraprofessional employees who provide interpreter services for non-English speaking parents to professional staff. You see the vote there failed as well. 3 yes, 7 no, and 7 abstained. And then the last one, reinstate teaching assistants for kindergarten teachers, and again, that one probably shouldn't have come to the committee for a vote. So any questions on those? Good. I did fail to mention in the initial portion of my presentation that one of the things we really appreciated Mr. Pompa especially doing is bringing back to this year's committee what the board did with the recommendations we made last year. We've kind of put a metric in place for the FFC itself to see how many of our recommendations the board takes action on. So we tried to get the committee focused on that, let's make recommendations that the board can really grab a hold of. I know we've left some details to be filled in. That's the nature of citizens giving this. We can't be the experts that we would like to be, but we hope we've provided you with the insights, the inputs, and the expectations of the community for this year.
Mr. Pomper, you got a question?
No, I just have a few comments. Thank you, President Barron. Thank you, Mr. Malone. President Barron, we started last year with a very concerted effort to make sure that we had recommendations that were brought to the board that were actionable. And I believe that with Mr. Malone's leadership this year, thank you very much for stepping up and agreeing to quite a bit of extra work in your life for the last 2.5 months. I think with his leadership, the ability to build consensus and make sure that everyone was heard, we were able to achieve to a great degree some great recommendations. We have 23 recommendations, well thought out, I think well crafted, so that we can take action on. So I want to commend Mr. Malone, the entire committee, for your dedication, for the countless hours of work that you put in, and especially the committee chairs, because I know they had to work even a little bit extra than everyone else, and communicating with emails and phone calls and everything. I think the committee did a great job. I like the committee structure, the subcommittee structure. I think that worked really well. And so I'm really proud of the work that you guys have done. We had a great committee last year. I think you guys have elevated it to the next level, and you've set a high standard, especially for next year's committee. And I'm hoping that most of you will come back next year. I think one of the reasons this committee works so well is that half of the committee was basically experienced. They'd been here the year before, and so that definitely helps. And so, we'll look to continue that next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Mr. Malone, thank you very much.
Thank
you
you.
to the committee, the presenters. We sure appreciate it. And I'll second the motion that y'all come back next year. And the financial futures recommendations will come back, probably not as a lump, but as individual items to be added to the budget. And you'll see them discussed or voted on, or just voted on as part of the budget. Right. Next item. If you're here for the code of conduct, raise your hand. Thank you for staying with us. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. This evening, we'd like to bring forward the Student Code of Conduct and the revisions to the Code of Conduct. We have a brief presentation by Ms. Muldrew tonight on the changes to the Code of Conduct, and there aren't very many. Ms. Muldrew.
Good evening, President Barron, Dr. Cavazos, school board members, administrative staff. I'm going to present briefly the proposed changes to our 2013-2014 Student Code of Conduct. But before I do that, I would like to introduce to you some of my committee members. Not all of my committee members could be present this evening, but the ones that stayed, when I call your name, would you please stand? Ms. Adrena McDonald, she's one of our teachers at Venture. Ms. Chanel Hutchison, she's a teacher at Carter. Ms. Becky King from DIDC. Ms. Ebony Lewis Bailey, teacher and coach. Mr. Harry Flood, a PTA representative. Ms. Crashetta Willis, Hutchison teacher. Mr. Michael Plowden, our Amos parent. And Mr. James Smith, security, if he's still here. There he is. So this is part of my committee that we've met for about an hour for a little over a month to get you these changes. Thank you guys for staying. You may be seated. Okay, without further ado, here are our proposed changes. On page 6, we added the word students to this section. We wanted our students to have the ability to be able to contact law enforcement. On page 18, we make clarifications to what is Section 504. There were some updates in 2011, and so we had to make some changes to give clarification to Section 504 and what the disability is and give more of a clear definition of 504. In addition to that, on page 18, in our FAQs, we talked about what an impairment was under Section 504, and again, this was for clarity. On pages 19 and 20, we added the information on our camera buzzer system. We discussed the extra layer of protection that we're going to have at our elementary campuses, and that continues to the next slide, where we discuss that the exterior doors at our elementary campuses will be locked during the school day. And then we also discussed the process. We listed the process that visitors are going to go through when they're entering our elementary campuses. On page 27, we added the language discussing nicotine-based and electronic cigarettes and e-cigarettes. We were seeing some issues with that with our students, so we wanted to add that language to our student code of conduct in our misbehavior section. And then on page 30, we added language for technology if our students tried to degrade the character of our school personnel by maybe recording our teachers or putting them on Instagram or on Facebook or creating a fake Facebook account. We wanted to make sure that we had that language in our student code of conduct. On page 49, this is our transportation section, and we just wanted to align that information with electronic cigarettes and vapor cigarettes like we had in our misbehavior section if those issues happened while the students were on our school buses. Then we go to our dress code section, and on page 52, we added language for a full-length undershirt with straps no less than 2 inches in width. If students, with the style nowadays, there are some shirts that are transparent and see-through, and we wanted to make sure that we had language in there for students to make sure that they had undershirts under those materials or those types of see-through material. And then on page 53, in our pants section, we discussed and we added language that torn, cut, slashed, or frayed material that reveals any skin or undergarment will not be appropriate if it's above the knee. And then on the next 6 slides is where we added our student guidelines for BYOT, and that is on pages 59 and 60. So the next 6 slides are the student guidelines for BYOT. And then on page 60 was the language that we added for the exception when our campuses are using BYOT, that the telecommunication devices can be on and visible. On page 83, this was a clarification to let students know that if you're an 11th or 12th grader, you can have lunch on or off campus. But if you are classified as a 9th or 10th grader, that your campus lunch will be on campus. On page 84, this was clarification, making our RTI notice, our response to intervention, just rewording that section and making it clear for our parents to understand. And that continues to the next slide. And then on page 85, we also had clarifications for our SSI, stating that grades 5 and 8, the students must meet the passing standards for the STAR, so that they can be promoted to the next grade level. And then on page 92, this was added language that we added so that we could have clear instructions for our students that if they are home-based, if they will be allowed to participate in extracurricular or after-school activities. We wanted to make sure that we had clear language in there so our parents would know if their child was in an extracurricular activity when they would be allowed to participate the next time. And that concludes our proposal. Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. Thank you, Ms. Modrew. I appreciate the information.
You're welcome.
Just some questions. The first one on page 18, the 504 definition, the reference to Appendix A to Part 104, is that Appendix A of the Student Code of Conduct? Is that where it's listed? Is that the source, or where will the source be for people to see?
No, sir. That's in Section 504 law. I knew that you were going to ask me that question, and so I spoke with Ms. Linda Rogers to make sure that I was going to give you the accurate information. She's our 504 coordinator. She pulled that information from the 504 law and guidelines.
Okay, okay. I just didn't know if that would be something that would be helpful for our parents to see, because when I look at that, I'm thinking, well, what is that true differentiation, distinction, definition, et cetera? So that would be a recommendation maybe to put it in there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. On the page 30, the using technology to degrade the character of school personnel, if I have to read my notes here, let's see. First off, do we need to include other things, relative to anyone else as far as students, volunteers, citizens, versus just school personnel?
We have that language in our Student Code of Conduct when we talk about cyberbullying, and also on if they have pornographic images of other students, we have that listed as misbehaviors. This one, we wanted to make sure. We've had some issues where administrators have popped up fake Facebook accounts, and with the BYOT, we wanted to make sure that we covered this part so that teachers would know that we had some teeth into it in case students decided to post or make degrading things on the social media. And I think Ms. Heather is here to also do some clarification.
Ms. Moldrew let me know that this one was coming, and I've given it some thought and done some additional research. And one thing I would say, and we might want to visit about this in closed session, but this implicates or could implicate, there's already case law about these types of issues, fake Facebook pages, and we have to be very careful. And I see this as we'd like to add it as a group 4 offense. I know that there are lower level offenses that I think things like this would already fall under, without maybe talking about turning point and things like that. We just have to be very careful anytime we're handling one of these situations that we're asking all of the constitutional questions about whether or not it's happened at school, whether or not it truly is something that is a true threat, which is legally not protected. There are some other legal implications, but we want to be very careful about, frankly, there's only so much we can do for employees when it comes to whether it's technology or some other way, whether it's spray paint on the side of a wall. Well, that's vandalism. Never mind. whether it's on a piece of paper or it's on Facebook or a text message, whatever it may be, anytime we're going to look at disciplining students for something that's speech, we need to look at whether or not it's protected, where it happened, how it happened. I guess I'd like to visit more maybe with Ms. Moldrew and Mr. Hill about this and see how this would work. And I'm not sure what my final recommendation would be yet, but I'll let y'all discuss.
Okay.
Anyway, I just want to kind of give you that.
Well, I appreciate it. Don't go too far, though, because
Okay.
I have follow-up with that. When I read this, not knowing this fake Facebook situation specifically, I looked at it much, I guess, larger in scope, casting a bigger net, if you will, that using technology to degrade. What about say, an example of where a student, would they be cited as using technology to degrade if they were using their phone or something to audio or video record what they feel is an improper or inappropriate behavior by a teacher, and then at some point there is or is not personnel actions related to that situation. Is there too much gray area in this language to
That's pretty
open that
wide
can of
open, I
words?
agree. It's pretty wide open. And I
Okay.
know there was some discussion about using the words defame, slander, slander, libel, those kind of things. And those have very specific legal definitions.
Right.
They're very hard to prove. So I hate for, on one hand, I certainly understand why we want to curb this
Sure.
and not have these kinds of problems. On the other hand, because of the constitutional concerns and because of those specific legal definitions, and I hate for teachers or administrators to get hung up on trying to prove libel, slander, defamation for a student discipline matter. So I think we need to be
Look at
cautious
it a little
about
bit more. Okay.
this one.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. On the subject of pants, the change is skin or undergarment above the knee is considered inappropriate. I realize the example that you gave us. Does that mean that we're okay with holes in the, in the knees as an example? Ragged clothing, that type of thing? We're okay with that now, or we're not?
As long as it is not above the knee.
Okay. Okay.
May I say something on that? Because I noticed at an event that I went to where some students were getting awards, it was an athletic thing, very casual dress. A young lady had the pants on, and I noticed that they were torn above the knee, but she had underneath it some appropriate clothing that covered those holes. And I thought, how clever. She's gone around the rule, found a way to do this, and this adds the clarification that what she did was really appropriate according to these guidelines.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good, just clarifying there. And on the page 83, the credits and grades for on-campus lunch or on or off-campus lunch, does our I don't remember which policy it is, I should have looked. Does our classification policy match this, or would it have to be amended to sync? And that might not be something that you would have the answer to. I don't know if that would be a Ms. Castillo or Mr. Hill, or there's heads
I don't
shaking
have
that
the
it's
answer
okay.
to that one, sir.
Okay.
The credits for reclassification or for classification of students to the next grade level does match this: 6 for a sophomore, 12 for a junior, and so forth. So that is consistent.
Okay. And is it, in the policy says the number of credits by the beginning of the school year, that's all the same?
That is correct. I believe that, and there was some conversation about reclassification at semester. And I think the board did approve that for other reasons, and I think it will be considered here also.
Yeah, let's make sure that we have the alignment of policy.
Yes.
Okay.
Because that was a recent change.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And let's see. And then this might be my last one. Not following my comment tracker thing here. On the home-based instruction, is this any different than a student being suspended? Is it just a different word for being suspended off campus? Or is it the same thing? And I'm just unfamiliar with the term.
The home-based instruction, they are able to get instruction. The suspension, they could lose possible credit, but the home-based instruction, that is the majority of what discipline our students are given when we send them home. We send them home home-based, and they're allowed to get their homework and be able to do their homework.
Versus an actual suspension, they don't have those amenities offered, so to speak?
Not all of them, sir.
Huh,
And we
okay.
try to stay away from the suspension part.
Huh.
And we use the
I never knew
language.
that. That's a
we
new
use
term
the
to
language
me.
home-based.
Okay. Interesting. I looked at home-based instruction. If I didn't know that, I'd think, oh, that's a good thing. People are getting home-based instruction, but apparently that's a bad word. Okay, well, thank you, and that is all I have. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Muldrew?
Yes, sir.
Let's make sure that the home-based instruction is not confused with our home-based instruction where students are receiving instruction at home by our staff.
Our
And-
homebound?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So make sure there's a definition or some distinction there to
Yes, sir.
clarify that.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Sullins?
Thank you. Ms. Muldrew,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm interested in the BYOT, how it's rolled out and how it's working on campuses, and it seems like it would just could present just a wide range of disciplinary infractions. You know, whether I have my phone out when I'm not supposed to have it out, I listen to music instead of Googling something about a science class, or I'm doing something egregious like defaming another person. As you work through this year, how do we decide what's a level 1, level 2? Did that greatly complicate our student code of conduct?
No, ma'am, it didn't. We allowed the schools to decide. What we tried to do is, if the device is to be on, if instruction is to take place, then the teacher has control of that classroom. And what I'm hearing back from my administrators is that it's working very smoothly. The kids are realizing this is an opportunity for me to have my electronic device, so I'm not going to try to be disruptive or not follow the directions, that this is a bonus. And so from the high school down to junior high, I haven't heard a lot of grumblings in elementary. All the students tend to be doing what they are supposed to be doing. No one has called me for an alternative disciplinary consequence.
Well, because sometimes when policies are new, especially something as bold as getting to have your cell phone out in class, I know, I just wondered if that, had created any particular new distractions, the rollout's going smoothly.
When I had my assistant principal's training, the majority of them said things were going very smooth.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Pena?
My comments were more along the lines of Ms. Sullins, but I did find out something yesterday. I'm on the, maybe it was this morning. I can't remember. I was so many places today. I'm on the Chamber of Commerce Champion Education Committee, and I'm really on there as a Rotarian, and Craig Wright's on as the AISD representative. But it is all the teaching entities, UTA, TCC, and so on, that are on this committee. And there was information shared to us that there is a test case going on at Lamar High School right now, in which the students are provided iPads that are taking the place of a whiteboard, and the teacher actually is connected to each one of those iPads, and she writes on her iPad, and they can see it, and then she can click to a specific student, see what they're doing on the iPad, whether they're participating or not, whether they're doing their homework or not, and can comment directly to that student on that iPad, thus not embarrassing them if they're not getting it. Are you having trouble? Why don't you try this method, because they can see how they're working it. And what they did also find out was the AP English class that they have, those students aren't as engaged on the iPad. Where they're finding success are like in the algebra and the remedial math classes. Those students who prior to this were not engaged, not participating, they have jumped threefold in now their participation, because they're getting that individual plus group teaching. And that may resolve what you were talking about, the issue of the bring your own technology situation, where they can tell what they're doing on each one of the devices.
Did you have something to add? I noticed. I know we were just talking, and I know that you've been very involved in this event. And so, Ms. Pena.
What I can add to that is a pilot program that we have going on at Lamar that is very effective at this moment. And they're looking, it's a gentleman out of California who is working on this with his company, and they are looking at ways to run this beta project so that they can have a really good product at the end. But it has been highly engaging, I believe, and successful with those students.
Yes, that was what they were, this gentleman was reporting this out, at the committee meeting, and I was delighted to hear all that because the issues that Mrs. Sullins is talking about were a concern to me. The gentleman from UT Arlington, who is a high-tech type individual, he was concerned more about the security of the situation because they use iCloud, what security was in place to prevent people from getting personal information, et cetera. But the individual who presented it said that all that had been taken care of.
They have all the security in place.
So, you know, it'll take care of all those issues we've been concerned about and perhaps allow to ensure that the code of conduct's in place.
Thanks you for sharing that with us. It's just exciting, these changes. So.
Thank you, and thank you to the committee. We will bring this back for a vote with some minor changes, right?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the review of board policy AE local. Dr. Pasos.
Thank you, President Barron. This evening, we'd like to review our board policy, local board policy AE. It has to do with some work we've been doing, really with the establishment of our strategic plan with regard to managed performance empowerment and our theory of action for our school district. And so, before I begin, I'd like to introduce from CRSS, the CRSS leader, Dr. Kathy Mintzberg. Thank you for joining us. She's been working with us on this policy. CRSS is the Center for Reform of School Systems, which is very intentional in those words because it's reform of the entire system. And Dr. Wally Carter helped with this policy, crafting this policy as well. Michael Hill and Cindy Powell were also involved in this. So, I think I'm going to do it from up here. And just to give you a perspective from our current AE local policy, it is outdated. It has our district mission statement, et cetera, that we're crossing through there to then replace it with our proposed policy AE. That's right. The purpose of the policy is to cite the board's mission statement, the core beliefs, the theory of action, which together direct district-wide system of continuous improvement. And you'll find in this policy, the words are very intentional, and we spent some time back and forth on the purpose of the words and how it's going to drive the improvement of the district. I won't read all the words, but just the ones that are pertinent here. Our mission statement is certainly to align it to our strategic plan, and our mission statement and our strategic plan to empower and engage all students to be contributing responsible citizens reaching their maximum potential. Also note that the core beliefs are stated straight from our strategic plan. The board beliefs that were stated in the strategic plan and developed are listed there. And so we move to the theory of action. And the board's theory of action renders its mission statement and core beliefs into a system. Again, that word system will be very apparent in its word and also implicit in some of the other paragraphs. That creates a high-performing school district for all of its students. The board commits to managed performance empowerment, or MPE, theory of action to realize the system and to align the goals, the plans, the policies, the budgets, and the administrative actions. And those are very intentional words to really encompass the entire system. So MPE is basically where performance and instruction are managed within the culture of required standards and accountability, where we would hold some things that are very tight, if you will, in terms of district control, but also let some things go in terms of empowerment. So it balances the imperative to align and manage instruction, and the instruction is one thing we'll hold tight, with the obligation to respond to the unique needs of school communities, encourage innovation, and create a high-performance culture. The board believes that managed performance empowerment combines the efficacy of a curriculum management system. And the curriculum management system is something that we'll hear from the curriculum audit. And they're going to recommend also, because that's part of their metric and their design, to have a whole curriculum management system outlined in your board policy. With the dynamics of a performance culture, It directly ties empowerment to performance and does not leave either one of those to chance. That both of these are managed, very intentional. So we talk about our standards with MPE, and it begins with standards pertaining to academic content, and you'll hear that. Again, this is aligning with our curriculum audit as well. Student and staff performance, graduation and promotion, business processes, safety, student conduct, ethics, and parent and community satisfaction. And again, we crafted that in a way that aligns with our satisfaction surveys that we're participating in and things like that. And so it's the board's intent that the district administration set standards for all of these important goals and processes. So not just to say that they're important, but to actually set some measurable standards. Where higher standards promote excellence, these standards shall exceed federal and state requirements. And we've talked a lot about that we want to move well beyond compliance, well beyond the federal and state requirements. And so we were very intentional in putting those words in the policy for your consideration. Dealing with curriculum management, MPE requires a controlled delivery system of the district's curriculum. And remember that the district's curriculum is, in essence, under examination with our curriculum audit. So essential features of this system include a rigorous and aligned district curriculum with delineated performance standards, professional development around the curriculum, a robust student information management system, certain assessments, and high-quality instructional practices fully reflecting a comprehensive instructional model. So we've input here specifically that instructional model, and so you'll see the uniqueness for our district in this policy. Such a system promotes and encourages thorough understanding of and professional response to 4 questions, and these are questions that, again, are unique to our district as we embrace the professional learning community's standards. And so here are the 4 questions, and I think they're really important, and we continue to reinforce them with our staff and our principals, that these 4 questions are pretty fundamental to what we do. And they're questions really that we ask about students. What knowledge and skills should each student acquire from each unit of instruction? And they seem rather simple questions, but they're highly complex. How do we know if each student has mastered the intended outcomes? Importantly, how will we respond when a student has initial difficulty in achieving the standards we've established? And question 4 is usually sometimes not included in some of these questions, but I think it's very important, and we've had a lot of discussion earlier on today, that what learning experiences do we provide to those students who already know the material? We have focused a lot and continue to focus, and it's important to focus on number 3, when students have difficulty. But what are we doing with students who have the learning experiences and already know the material? That's an equally important question for us and for our district. So we put it in the proposed policy. The pedagogy is that the board acknowledges that effective teaching is both an art and a science, that creativity and flexibility are desired in teachers as professionals who have the greatest impact in helping students achieve. And this is where it becomes more customized. The board therefore provides Arlington ISD teachers optimal freedom to teach the district's curriculum using their preferred teaching styles in accordance with the framework of the instructional model. So while it is an art and a science, there are some parameters and there are some frameworks, and that's the development of our instructional model to ensure that there's consistency across the school district. But we know that within that instructional model, you have to have creativity and freedom to teach. But there has to be a framework. Because the district must strike a good balance, controlling the delivery and of a well-managed curriculum, ensuring adherence to the instructional model, and yet promoting teacher expertise and creativity to affect affect high achievement. So the interplay between the requirements and the flexibility must be constantly monitored, and that's another key word in that section. And then that the administration shall report periodically on its efforts to achieve and maintain an effective balance. And again, that's the power of the metrics, the measures, and the things that we've already been putting in place. This was Wally's favorite section, accountability. MPE requires accountability, holding all people in the organization responsible for meeting the district's written standards. Accountability means that the district has a system for schools and functional units that establish desired outcomes and identifies key performance indicators. Accountability here includes empowerment of high performance or for high performance, considerable opportunities for guided improvement, and then that there are appropriate consequences for chronic deficiency. And these are not chronic deficiencies just for certain parts of the organization, but for all parts of the organization. So this is well beyond the classroom level, etc. So these were very intentional, very customized to many of the conversations that this board has had in developing the strategic plan, in implementing the plan. The board has had many of these conversations in that process. So on to empowerment. It's the board's intent to give increased autonomy to schools consistent with their school performance as measured by state assessments and by other valid measures of student performance and by operational performance. So for example, our student and staff surveys, that it's not just the state assessments, but it's other measures to give schools autonomy. But it's building on a foundation of an accountability system. Schools shall be given more or less control over school operations and instruction based on their needs and their performance. So high-performing schools shall be given increased latitude in functional areas specified by the administration. And we gave examples there in the policy, and we took these examples really from input from principals. Last summer when we were continuing to build the action plans for our strategic plan, we asked principals, where would they want the increased autonomy? And these are the ones that surfaced the most in their budgets, in their procurement, in their hiring, schedules, and workforce configurations. So we took this with input from principals who are ultimately going to be benefiting from this autonomy. Capacity is very important as part of this policy, that MPE requires capacity, and it's that simple. While the standards and accountability and empowerment contribute significantly to building capacity, direct efforts to develop knowledge, skills, and tools for effective leadership and instruction are also required. So it's not just enough to say that we have to have increased capacity. We have to be very intentional about how we build that capacity. So the board commits to supporting rigorous, evidence-based, relevant, and focused professional development that builds capacity on two fronts: service to students, on two fronts of service to students, effective leadership and effective instruction. And again, that's aligned to our strategic plan. At this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Wally Carter will be happy to answer any questions, Kathy Mintzberg, and we'll also be happy to answer questions.
Dr. Rice, who would you like to pick on first?
I don't want to pick on anybody. I want to say thank you. Thank you very, very much, Kathy, for providing some insight and consult, and everybody, Dr. Cavazos, that you worked with in putting this together. Going through the policy draft that you've put together, I've gone through just about line by line with the initial draft that myself and Mr. Pompa and Ms. Sullins created 2 years ago, probably now, a long time ago, and you hit all the highlights. And I'm tickled pink over this. This is great that we have this. It's something that we've been chomping at the bit about for a long, long time, and I really appreciate the way you've taken our somewhat lengthy, wordy, descriptive thing and boiled it down to what really needs to be there in policy. I think that's great. Not that we get wordy or anything up here, but I think I had one question. Let me get back to my original document. Regarding the curriculum management, which what we had was originally curriculum management and flexibility kind of combined. I wanted to ensure, one of the things I have highlighted in the original document is the key to doing this is balancing accountability for performance with empowerment based on the needs of the children and school performance. And I'm pretty sure that is what I I saw on the slide on the pedagogy as far as the interplay between the requirements and the flexibility in this regard. My question is, are we going to need additional policy from these different elements going forward besides this overarching AE local? And that might be a question that I'd ask for Kathy, because I know one of the things through CRSS and that what we feel as a team is we want this going forward for when in planning, when we're not here anymore, we want the policy, not the personality-driven district. And I just want to make sure that we, as a really functional super team of 8 right now, don't leave ourselves short-sighted for addressing the future. So if you could address that.
I think you're all to be congratulated. I think this is great work. It'll become now a standard in our collection of really good policies. They're good examples. You've thought through a lot of words. It's not just that you clipped and pasted. There are very specific intentional choices. If you'll remember back to your CRSS training, the fairy tales, remember Cinderella? You want not too tight. You really want to make sure that you don't put too much in your policy so that you've tied your hands for the future. This gives you a really good structure in which to now hang in some administrative procedures that you're going to get to see as a board. The administration is going to do it, and if you feel like there's not enough there, then you can always come back and make an addition to policy. But you've got a lot in this policy. It needs a lot more fleshing out. What means that you're empowered? What means you're not empowered? When does it happen? What is you're really going to get flexibility? But I would tend to keep that out of policy just so you create lots of ability to move quickly.
Okay. That's wonderful. I'm very pleased about this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mrs. Sullins.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions. I just have applause. What the number of hours and across time, months, that we have all sat and had conversations. And when I read this policy, it is a beautiful articulation of a lot of conversations over a long period of time, and I think this policy is it's just that one moment in time that we can celebrate what all we have accomplished and done with this. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Cavazos, thank you, Dr. Carter, thank you, Kathy. I think that this is very, very well done. Thank you.
Mr. Pompa.
Thank you. I was going to ask you, Kathy, while you were up here, if you want to come back up to the podium. I know what we're trying to accomplish with this policy. What do you see out of this policy? What kind of district do you see? I mean, you've seen a lot of these policies. You've spent a lot of time with a lot of districts throughout the country, and I know that you were instrumental in formulating it. So what kind of district do you see out of this policy?
We've added a new slide. You've never seen it. But it's a slide that shows what most districts look like. And what most districts look like are a bunch of ideas, a bunch of arrows, all pulling in different directions. No power, diffused power, chaos, there's confusion, there's no rational system. What you've got is a series of arrows all lined up. All the pieces of this policy are arrows, and they're all pointing in the same direction. So what you've done is you've magnified the power of what you're doing because it's rational. Someone in your organization can sit and say, wow, the mission aligns to the vision, aligns to the core beliefs, aligns to, I see where this is coming from. This is going to get us to the things that we believe and hold dear. And this is those things are going to then make sure our mission happens. And, I mean, constantly keep looking at it to make sure it truly aligns. But to me, you've got what most systems don't have, which is a rational, logical, repeatable process. Anybody can understand it and see that we're not sending ourselves in 50 different directions, but aligned. So that's the exciting word.
Thank you, Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Dr. Rice.
I was just going to say, so does that mean that we might be one of the first very positive case studies to come out of CRSS?
maybe
would
yet to be
love,
determined.
we'd love to come in about 2 years and then come back with all the wonderful results. So, you know, your surveys, your accountability system, the choices you've made. You know, what's missing in the whole MPE discussion nationwide is, now how did you do it? What are all the moving parts, those administrative procedures you're going to put in place, and where did you fine-tune them? What didn't work, what worked? So I love that idea.
Thank you. And Kathy used the word that kept on coming to my mind as I was listening to and reading this, is just powerful. I mean, absolutely powerful. It's thrilling to me to see this because, you know, and it's a little bit sad that I understand that most people in our community really don't know what this means for this district and for this community. You know, I've been telling everyone that the things that we've been doing over the last year are just so fundamental, so foundational that it's almost difficult to really appreciate because you really can't see them. We're laying down the foundation, doing all the groundwork that needs to be done for this, for what we want to accomplish with the school district, and this is another layer of that. We've established our strategic plan, we've got it going, we've funded it. As somebody mentioned earlier, it's not something that's just collecting dust on a bin. It's a living, breathing document, and it's guiding our every step. And now we've actually put it into policy. So as Dr. Reich mentioned, it is a district that is not driven by personality or by who's up here, but by policy, and that is extremely powerful. Dr. Cavazos, I want to commend you and your administration for really being able to capture the essence of the true essence of what this board is looking for, and really converting this district from a compliance-driven district that has delivered what we all agree is not what we want for our community, to convert it to a performance-driven district that is going to achieve those lofty goals that we've set, those lofty objectives that we set. And again, every step we take confirms or reassures me that we are going to achieve those very, very lofty goals. So thank you very much for this. Appreciate it.
Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Barron. Dr. Cavazos, one real quick question. I know we all love MPE and we bought into it, but there was a time where we as a board said, we need to know more about MPE. How does MPE really work? And I know many of our principals still are saying, all right, MPE, Managed Performance Empowerment, I kind of get it. Do we have in place, and now that we've created a policy, which is what we all were striving for, do we have in place to train the principals and give them the learning lessons, or if we've not already done it, on the MPE and what it's going to mean to them as we're going forward, and get them in that mindset of building it? Because we can create a lot of policies and put down the rules of how to lead, but if our own campus leaders aren't fully bought in, nothing really works.
And that work started as I guess late as last summer, and those examples of the autonomies came straight from the principals. And I think what the MPE means to the principals is autonomy so that they can continue to perform or perform even higher. And so budget was one that came out, staffing was one, hiring practices, schedules was very strong. The balance right now that we've been deliberating and contemplating even with principals is, so these autonomies you'll receive once you perform, but what are those components that you need in order to perform that are not then autonomies, if that makes sense, that you earn? So those are that's the next level of discussion, and that's the next level of work, is really beginning to nail some of those down of what are those autonomies. What does it mean about having autonomy to staff? And how far can I go? And we had a discussion even at the level principal meeting this week with the principals about saying, if you have a certain staffing number, for example, at your school, and you instead want the money because you want to do something at your school and you want to be able to say, well, I'll increase the class size a little bit, but give me the money and the resources because I'm not a Title I school or I'm not whatever. That's really the future. And some of this discussion about substitutes and how can I differentiate the pay as a campus with substitutes. Well, if I have money, because I've earned autonomy, maybe that's how I want to use it. This is really pushing those limits. And what I shared with the principals, secondary in particular, because we had more of the discussion there, was that the task and the challenges for the central office to manage that. And that while they are concerned a little bit about just give me the money and I don't want the staff, what we have to be concerned is that our system actually is able to adjust to those kind of demands. That to me is the real next step, is to define that. And Wally, you want to add to that?
There was just one additional thing that was mentioned to the elementary school principals today, and that was there's a lot of training that needs to be happening, and it's going to be ongoing. But, and one of the most difficult things is going to be those standards mapped against which autonomies. I mean, what performance over here says, okay, you're going to get this particular autonomy and how that relates real well. The other is training on how do you exercise those autonomies real well.
That's right.
Just because you now have budget, do you have the training about really doing a good budget and making sure that the resources are allocated properly? So even on that side of it, there'll be training going on, and that is going to be part of the leadership training throughout.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have one question, Kathy, while you're here, regarding what we're talking about most recently. Do you have information from CRSS that is helpful for Dr. Cavazos and his team regarding those challenges from the central aspect of implementing MPE, those structural changes, the processes that may be somewhat automated to ensure regulatory compliance, legal, those types of things, while they have the freedom out in the field, so to speak?
Actually, Dr. Cavazos has brought us in as a sort of advisor to their thinking, because there's not a book written about it. There's not a sheet somewhere that you can check off and say. So it's still very much in the art form. The good news is I was in a district that had an MPE system. I've studied other districts. We've worked with districts. So I have some body of knowledge that we can offer up. And they've been good about brainstorming with me and saying, well, what about this? Well, how did that get handled? Who did this, what, where? So it's been very useful to form this collaboration between CRSS and the staff here.
No, that's great. My follow-up to that is there any aspect within the MPE model that is just absolutely hands-off, as an example, that you could provide that has to be, sorry, this is just how it's done?
There are a lot of central office functions that do not decentralize very well. For example, transportation, food service, in some ways technology even. You can't say, well, everybody run their own network.
Right.
So there are these places that we've toyed with in other districts and found that it was too burdensome to the principals. It tied up all their time. They became managers of operations instead of instruction. The goal here is to free them up to spend more time doing instruction, not become great transportation schedulers. So that's kind of the advice I've given. Stay out of those kind of areas, because every now and then a principal will say, sure, I want to schedule the bus schedule for my kids, and then they get locked up 6 hours a week doing that.
Gotcha. So overarching transportation start and stop times, because that would obviously interfere with the transportation schedule from central office.
That's a compromise then. If you want to have control of your schedule, then how can we work with the transportation department and not drive that budget through the roof?
Yeah.
On the other hand, within the day, there's flexibility there. So even though your start and stop times may be set because of bus schedules, you got more flexibility during the day.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you're about to have a very exciting adventure. It's not a one-year adventure. It's really a very iterative, growing. You're going to start with baby steps, which was one of the pieces of advice. If you jump into it too wild and crazy, which we did a little bit of that in Houston, and found some people just drowned because they couldn't handle it. They'll kind of ease into it, and pretty soon the principals will raise their hand and say, okay, we're ready for some more. And, you know, we haven't thought about this, but we'd like to really own that over there.
Yeah.
They'll get a lot more creative as time goes on.
What about this is my final question, the interworkings of central or overall administration or administrative functions, departments, athletics, fine arts as examples? What we're talking about typically with MPE is individual campuses, but there are certain district-wide functions,
Right.
those two as examples, where there could be MPE autonomy.
Exactly.
And have you worked with districts that they've worked that out, where the
Right.
fine arts folks or the athletics folks still have that autonomy because they're experts, that's why we've hired them, but at the same time, they can work with campuses that are either autonomous or not? And how does that work?
Exactly.
Does it work?
Athletics is a really good example. There are coordinating functions that must remain central. Scheduling, making sure there are trainers, that kids are safe, that you've got medical support, the stadia are run well. At the same time, whether or not we have a football team at this school or not is really very much a campus decision. And you can't flop back and forth every year. You know, you got to grow your program. You have to make those selections, but I know that in Houston, we gave principals choice. And so the school that had all Central American immigrant students got rid of their football program and instituted a huge soccer program. The athletic department wasn't so keen on that when they first started because they were used to controlling everything. But over time, they got to understand they were a service provider, that central office really is there to enhance and serve schools. And you begin to change the thinking of central office departments. The most successful one for us was actually the print department. So over a period of years, the print department went completely fee-for-service. They gave them budget based on what had been spent in the past. And they got to be so focused on providing a high-quality product. You were surveyed, you got a bid from Kinko's along with the print shop's bid, that they began to make money. And they began to be so good, they could buy now bigger presses and for color and bleed off the edge and all this fancy stuff. And so then the private sector came in and said, well, could you print for us too? So the department actually could buy more and higher level equipment and service than accrued back to the schools in terms of benefit. But you know, if a department in central office says, we're here to serve schools, let's figure this out, over a period of years, they really will evolve and change in terms of the service they provide, the feedback that they seek from schools. Schools will begin to see them as real partners in what they're trying to get done, not the central office controlling this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And Kathy wasn't saying we're getting rid of football right now, just a clarification. You'll be run back to Houston, Kathy, quickly on that.
Couple of things, Dr. Cavazos. Will we bring AE logo back next time, or you need time to work on it some more?
We anticipate we'll bring it back May the 2nd, next time.
And will we go into next school year as an MPE district, or are we still amateurs and feeling our way along for next year?
Wally, you want to address the next step of the autonomies and the measures, because I think that's the work that comes next.
It begins with the committee, and the committee is going to start helping us with those standards and the autonomies. And like we're going to follow Kathy's advice about start simple, get it down really well. Everything itself being a system, you know, and how these things interconnect. Okay, so we're going to start simply and making sure that whatever is going to come up is going to be something that interconnects. And that committee will be comprised quite a bit with principals and central staff. And of course, if certain autonomies go into certain levels, then that may dictate that maybe some other members should be joining that committee, again, based on the substance of what those autonomies might be. So I imagine the committee itself will change, evolve over time as well.
And our first list of autonomies and measures what's our timeline?
I would think we want to begin immediately next year to have something. Now how many that's going to be or what listing that's going to be. Certain things lend themselves exact. I probably don't want to say anything right now because I don't want to give an expectation that may not pan out. But there are certain things that here's this performance, and with that performance, there's something that's directly related to that maybe you just have more autonomy. And that could happen easily for next school year.
Okay.
Okay.
There are a couple of things that we've spoken of tonight that probably need to be highlighted. One is that you have done a fabulous job presenting all of this to the community, and on behalf of the board, we sure do appreciate that. Second is that one of the great things we did was put all of our thinking and writings on the website, and I know people are reading that because every email I get, they're quoting the strategic plan to me, all right? You said this, go ahead and do it. That's the truth. Right? And I'm happy for that. Kathy, thank you very much for coming in. Dr. Carter, appreciate it. We ready to move on? Okay. Paving the road to college readiness.
Thank you, President Barron. This time we'd like to visit with you about our initial plans and maybe some long-term plans for improving our PSAT performance and our National Merit Scholars and things like that we've been talking about that's certainly aligned to our strategic plan. So Evan Smith is here to give us the presentation.
Hi.
Evan.
President Barron, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos. I need to know, there we go. It's magic, somehow that happens. I would love to talk to you about paving the road to college readiness. And before I do, I want to thank some people who have worked very hard on this with me, and that is Julie Porter and Nell Fielding, and also Michelle Wilmuth-Sonato as well. And talking about this strategic plan, I would like to talk about inspired learners and our goal number 2, which is prepare our graduates to excel in higher education or the career of their choice. And under that, the strategies of implement higher education partnerships and expand the dual credit opportunities and dual credit enrollment, along with offering career and technology higher education admission exam preparation for all of our students. So we're going to talk about our belief, which is we believe that effective teaching and leadership are essential for our student achievement. And the purpose is to ensure higher achievement on college entrance exams for all students and to increase the number of AISD National Merit Scholars. And to do that, we want to provide a comprehensive summer and fall testing program taught by well-trained teachers and offer them on each high school campus. So I want to visit with you a little bit about that and about a timeline that we've kind of put together to do this. What we hope is very soon to establish a team of teachers who will develop and deliver the PSAT and SAT course. And in early May that we begin looking at the data that we have available to us to identify areas for support and to identify potential National Merit Scholars. We give the test to all 10th grade students, and we have that data now. And we want to look at that to make sure that we've identified and keyed into those kids. At that same time, we want to determine the number of students per campus and the numbers of teachers required to instruct these courses. In late May, we'll develop the program and the timelines and exact dates and those types of things for the summer. And then in June, we'll have the teacher training by College Board that will align to the students' needs. In other words, they'll take our district data, we'll look at that, and we'll make sure that we're shoring up those things in those courses so that we can hit those highlights. In July and August, delivery of our program. Then coming back in September, we'll see how did our program go, and we're going to make amendments for our fall programming. Then from September to January, we'll offer some prep courses after school and on Saturdays. And then from September to January, you have the SAT administered. And then in October, we give the PSAT administration. And then in January, we have the PSAT results, and we receive them and analyze them. And one other person that I left off my list, I do much better before 8 p.m. I just need y'all to understand that. Is right behind me, and that's Dr. Wally Carter. He's kind of really helps me a lot with so many things, so I apologize for that. So that kind of covers what our plans are right now for the immediate future for PSAT, SAT, and I'm going to come back at the end and kind of talk about a little bit more of a comprehensive plan.
But I want to move quickly to the AccuPlacer. And the AccuPlacer is something that, as you know, our students all need to take in order to take and pass in order to be able to take a dual credit course. And so we are looking right now at opportunities to expand for our students classes in this area too, so that more of our kids can make that requirement and take those courses. And it'll be a math and an English focus. And so this summer, in spring, we'll establish and train a team of teachers who will deliver the AccuPlacer, which is aligned to the new assessment. The assessment's going to change in September. So what we want to make sure is the training that we're giving them is aligned to that new assessment. And then we would offer the course in fall and also in the spring and the summer next year. And it will have that on each of the high school courses, each of the high school campuses. But all of this together, we want to spend a year of really studying and developing and making a really comprehensive plan for our SAT, PSAT, and AccuPlacer programs for the implementation in the following year. There's lots of things that we can do to expand that. We can look at semester-long courses that we can have. What we want to do is make sure that we're really looking at our system in general, aligning that to what we want our students to be able to do upon their graduation and upon their high school readiness for college and career, and we want to make sure that we're embedding that into our curricular development. So, any questions?
Mrs. Sullins.
Mr. Thank you very much for this presentation this evening. I did have one question on the AccuPlacer boot camp. On the national merit, we're identifying students early to see who may benefit from that. Will we do a similar process for AccuPlacer, especially with those kids that are coming up from the 8th grade that may be using and maybe going into our dual credit career tech programs that need to get past that AccuPlacer to get admitted?
Exactly. Well, I don't know that we have an indicator for an AccuPlacer exactly, but what we will have or might have after the comprehensive look is we might have other assessments that we can look at to identify those kids earlier in their career, in the 8th grade, for example, that we can look at those.
I'd be hopeful that, if we knew if they came out of that career tech higher ed investigations class, that they may be interested in pursuing career tech, and maybe there may be some type of evaluation to see if they need some support to get recruited into an AccuPlacer boot camp, so they'd be prepared and be able to take advantage of that.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. I like this. I like what I'm hearing. I have a question on the program amendments. So you're going to deliver it in July or August, and then those amendments are going to be based on just how the training went and that type of thing, what you can modify and improve, make more efficient. I would assume that's what that means. Okay. And regarding the determination of the number of students that you can handle as far as with the teachers as well, obviously there is going to be a number. How is that selection is it going to be a first come first serve for people to sign up, the kids to sign up for it? Have you thought about that yet?
I think that we're thinking about that in the process. And I want to go back let me add something to your first part. What we hope to do in this course is to give a pre-test and a post-test. And that's the data that we would use to come back and look at the amendments in the fall. And what we also want to do is see how was our effectiveness during that summer program, so that we can, at that point, when it's still fresh on our mind, really align that course for the next time we deliver that long course in the summer. And then also the shorter courses will be the fall and the Saturdays to make sure that we get the meat in there. So that's kind of what we would be doing as far as analyzing the course or making course amendments. As far as who we select for these courses, we will work on that. What we want to make sure, we do have it open to students, but that we're also making sure that we have invitations going out to those students that we see that are at high promise on the PSAT. So we do still have some details to work out, but we'll get that worked out together.
And then my follow-up is, over time, you will probably be able to capture data of the student success rates on the actual exams. All the the very profitable companies that have these courses that are going to look at us as a direct competitor are surely going to do what they can to discredit what we're doing in-house here. And that's just the name of the game in business. So I would just keep that in mind and do everything you can. I'm sure with Dr. Carter's help, we'll have all the data to back up what we're doing in the district here, because that's potential loss of significant revenue for those companies. The more that we do this and expand it, and it's great, the less they're going to have the need, or we're going to have the need in our district for those kids to go to those programs. So, and along those lines, you probably already have an idea of how to capture the data, but maybe looking at what they do and how they do that, we could learn a little bit as well from those established companies.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
How are we going to train the trainers?
We're going to train the trainers through, College Board has training.
Do we pay for that?
Yes, we do.
Will the students who are taking these classes have to pay, or is it all offered by the district for the kids that the trainers are going to train?
Right, the trainers will have been trained through the College Board. Are you asking if the students will pay a fee? We're still working through those details.
Okay. Mr. Pompa.
Thank you, President Barron. I was going to follow up on what Dr. Reich said. I'd like to see this be as inclusive as possible, so that as many students as we can handle can take advantage of these great programs. And I was just going to point out, too bad that the FFC committee left early, because this is addressing, I think their very first recommendation tonight was to expand SAT, PSAT, or,
Already got one done, Mr. Pompa.
Yes.
All right.
They ask and we
right
deliver. Ms. Evans is right on the ball, so.
After 8 p.m.
That's great to see. That was my only comment. I just want to, as you go through the details, we want to push to be more inclusive with these programs. And I know that there's a cost involved with this, but I believe, and again, agreeing with Dr. Reich, let's measure the performance, make sure that it is doing what we think it's going to do. But I really believe that this is where we want to spend the money in programs like these. And so I think we'll get high return on our investment. Thank you.
So too.
One of the other things that's also very important and, again, bang for your buck, is this training that these teachers have. Those strategies and everything can be done and applied in regular classes. It's not just about SAT, PSAT prep, and that's going to help on STAR performance, or whatever EOCs the state finally decides on. So it's going to have some major broaden effect for whatever the cost is.
Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Barron. Dr. Carter, perfect point, because I was about to say this is not about teaching to the test. This is about the whole focus. But Dr. Carter, I did have, and Evan, you may actually be able to answer this one. I know in our 28 metrics that we are judging on, the SAT and ACT is one of those barometers we're going to judge on. Is the AccuPlacer also included in our metrics?
Yes.
I couldn't remember if AccuPlacer was on there. I knew SAT and
I think it's on
ACT
there
and
because,
PSAT.
in fact, I know it's on there because a draft that you had it with only one C, and I had to
Perfect.
correct it.
That's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
The second to the last slide you had was establish and train a team of teachers who will deliver AccuPlacer aligned to the new assessment.
Yes.
What's the new assessment?
The new assessment's coming out. It's a new AccuPlacer.
New AccuPlacer.
It's just I'm sure, new and improved. Maybe.
Because AccuPlacer is a difficult test for our kids.
It is.
Because a school that I'm familiar with sent 100 students to a nearby community college, and not one of them passed AccuPlacer. Not one. And these were pretty good kids. The math portion is no calculator, and that's a shocker. So anything we can do to prepare our students to do better on AccuPlacer will be a great accomplishment. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Legislative update.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, Cindy Powell will give us our brief legislative update. Or lengthy.
Yeah, I think my friends in the corner are very ready to go. I got instructions as I left the table.
I want the
So I will try to accommodate. But no, thank you, President Barron, board members, Dr. Cavazos. It is time again for our biweekly legislative update. And there actually is not a whole lot of really big stuff to talk about this time, so it will be brief. But we have 39 days left in the legislative session, and it adjourns May 27th. So we're going to start to see some really big stuff in the next few weeks with conference committees. Again, we talk about House Bill 5, that is the signature piece of education legislation considered by the legislature this year. It passed out of the House and now has been heard by the Senate Education Committee. They passed it easily from committee, and it now goes to the Senate floor. I do see I had a typo here. Many provisions from Senate Bill 3 is what that should say instead of 23. Were substituted into House Bill 5. The House Bill, the committee substitute for House Bill 5 does still include a single foundation plan. It includes endorsements for several different areas: business and industry, STEM, arts, and humanities, but it removes from those eligible endorsements public services and multidisciplinary studies that had been in the House version. They also added, on the Senate side, English 1 to the list of end-of-course exams, and they combined the reading and writing components of English into one exam. So the test that the kids would take now for end-of-course will be English 1 and English 2, and again, within those, the reading and writing tests are combined. Algebra 1, biology, and U.S. history. That's a little different than the combination from the House. The House had just English 2, reading, and separate tests for writing. Districts can choose, these were amendments. There were some substitutions and then there were amendments in committee. One of the amendments was that districts can choose either SAT or ACT to measure college readiness. It does require the state to appropriate enough funds for student remediation in high school, and it eliminates references to the A to F accountability rating system that were in the House version of HB 5 because the language is addressed in other pieces of legislation, was their reasoning. And then it requires districts to administer either the SAT or ACT Explore test to 8th grade students and the PSAT or ACT Plan test to 10th grade students, and then the state would be required to provide the funding for this. They also, another bill of great interest just today even is House Bill 1025. It's a supplemental appropriations bill that was approved by the House Appropriations Committee today, just this morning, and that bill would actually add $500 million into the budget for the 12-13 year for public education. And what they've indicated is that the funds would be distributed on a per WADA basis across the entire state. And based on what I'm reading in the bill summaries, if you literally take it just like that, it's just straight per WADA distribution of an amount not to exceed $72.50 per WADA. If we got that $72.50 per WADA, then that would be more than $5 million of additional revenue available this fiscal year. So I kind of liken this to the Ed Jobs money we got a couple of years ago that came really at the end of the year. But you know, we'll take it, that's for sure. Senate Bill 1458. This is a committee substitute of 1458. This is the TRS omnibus bill, and this bill was filed and was heard in the Senate State Affairs Committee last week. And as the bill was filed, it didn't look anything like it does now. It was filed to take care of some cleanup stuff in TRS regs. Senator Duncan filed a massive committee substitute or a substitute to the bill in committee that would make some dramatic changes to the pension benefits and to school district requirements to pay into TRS. So they would change the benefit requirements, and then also beginning in 2015, school districts that don't pay into Social Security, which is the vast majority of school districts, would be required to pay to TRS an amount of money to help with contributions towards the fund. And they would split that into two categories. For employees that have where there is a state minimum salary schedule, mainly educators, school districts would be required to pay 1% of the minimum salary from the state schedule for those employees. For all other employees that do not have a state minimum salary schedule, which would be maintenance workers, a lot of the administrative positions, business office, various places, paraprofessionals, those particular positions, we would be required to pay 1% of their actual salary. And so we worked, it took us a pretty good while to even get to the definition of exactly how to apply that. And we talked with Mo Casey this morning, and they gave us this definition. And so Mr. Drollinger's worked on that this afternoon, and we've estimated that we believe that this would cost us over $2.6 million. I mean, it's an enormous cost. So we are having some conversation with David Anderson, with Hilco. This bill comes back to committee on Monday for some more discussion, and so we anticipate by tomorrow I will have a draft of a letter, and we'll have that to the Legislative Affairs Committee of our board to look at, so that we can send something directly to Senator Duncan on this. And David Anderson tells me that it is Senator Duncan working pretty much on his own on this bill. This is something, as David put it, he has put this on his back and is carrying this. So, and what we hear is that it is very much a tough sell. It's less likely that it will pass than less than a 50-50 chance, but still it's something that is very significant, and we need to work this deal. There have been a couple of voucher bills that were heard in committee last week in the Senate, and we provided letters opposing those and worked through, again, Hilco to be very clear about our position on any public money being spent with private schools. Finally, on the school finance lawsuit, just as a quick note, there's starting to be some rumors circulating, pretty widespread rumors, that one of the plaintiff groups, the Calhoun County plaintiff group, which is one of the wealthy districts or one of the wealthy school groups that was part of the lawsuit, may petition the district court to hold a hearing after the legislative session to readdress some of the issues brought forth in the lawsuits, especially by the taxpayer group that we were part of. Their thought is that there's enough money being placed back into public education this session that it takes care of some of the equity issues that were raised by the taxpayer fairness group. And so there is some concern that they may ask that the judge would reopen the case. He has not yet issued a written ruling on the lawsuit, and I think that was expected to have come by now. So I think he likewise is watching to see what happens in the legislature. And that is it. And now my friends can go home.
Dr. Reich.
Yeah,
right. All right. See if we can get out of here before midnight. I don't know, though. Number one, regarding HB 5 getting through the Senate committee, just to let this board know, Senator Patrick has all along been in line with, well, not in line with HB 5, and during the 5 hours of committee testimony and deliberations, Senator Patrick started with chastising the business groups out there that were essentially on his side at the beginning of all this. So somewhere a little voice got to him about, I guess, his future political career or something. But he completely did a 180, changing his tune. It's really kind of funny to me. But in the public eye, he was applauded and championed the bill, and he's the hero. So I found that funny. What seemed to be the lone dissenter left was Texas Association of Business and Bill Hammond. Well, maybe Tier as well. Jim, yeah. So that was just an interesting observation I thought I'd share with everybody as far as the political landscape at the state level. One question, Ms. Powell, on that HB 5, with that SB 3 language in there, is the funding for our 8th grade CTHE course, did it make it, or was that stricken from it?
That is something I actually wondered about this afternoon myself. I can't find in any of the bill summaries yet. The substitute language is not posted online, but the bill summary I've read, I did not see that, and I had that same thought. I'm going to continue checking on that, and I will let you all know.
Okay, yeah, I sure hope it's there. And then just another news flash for everybody. The House Pub Ed Committee voted out several bills quickly, I think this afternoon. And one of them, I guess this is the one that they feel is the traction bill for the decreasing the number of assessments for the elementary and junior high level, the 3 through 8 testing. So I was just going to read that. It's HB 866 by Huberty. And it would decrease the number of assessment instruments administered in grades 3 through 8. Math and reading would occur in grades 3, 5, and 8 instead of annually. Writing and science in grades 5 and 8. Social studies in grade 8. So grade 8's a big year with five assessments. And that might be a little daunting if I was an 8th grader and a teacher in that level. And then TEA would determine the minimum satisfactory adjusted scaled score for each assessment instrument. So I don't know if that seems, seeing they passed that out, that seems to be the bill that they're probably going to look at. So maybe we could check with David Anderson on that and to see what the flavor of the House is as far as the full chamber, and then what we're looking at on the Senate side. So that's something for us to be aware of, because our local representative, Diane Patrick, has been very passionate about trying to do something and champion decreasing things. So in one hand, I'm sad that it's not her name, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if she's on there somewhere as an author or in support of this. But I just want to let everybody know that. And gee, look at that, it was only a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. That is our last item. Board members' reports? Why not? Oh, it's not on there? No. Oh, it's not on there. Well then.
Let's go home.
We're done.